I'm here now. How's it going? Oh, I'm also not properly set up. So this thing is a lie. It says setting up, but I'm not. I mean, I wasn't. I should be. I'm gonna do studies today, kind of, sort of studies, maybe. You're the goat to me. That's good. I'm happy. Maybe we'll do a goat stream one day. We'll study animals. We can start out with goats. I don't know if I've ever drawn. Have I ever drawn a goat? I don't know. I'm not sure if I've ever drawn a goat. Also, I need to save stuff. Save as. Let's start my stream by setting up my stream. How's that sound? 8:54. That's a lot of streams we've had. Save in my file to keep things tidy. There we go. These are from last stream. I liked all of them. Even this one, which we worked on, and then I turned it into something that I didn't like at all. But we got there. That's what we did. Not thrilled with it, but you know what? That's okay. You know what? We can actually close this so we don't have to look at it again. And I don't know the best way to go about this. I think what I'm going to do is just turn this to gray so that if we're doing like a study or something, I don't know, it's a little bit, makes more sense. Maybe we also, I don't know why I'm still going to have the grids here, but I'm going to still have the grids here. Do something like this. One moment. Sorry, I'm not looking at chat yet. Actually, speaking of chat, if YouTube is running, I actually can't see. Oh, I can see YouTube chat now if it's running. There we go. Okay, there's that. Hello, happy Thursday, Linuxo. How's it going? If you ever did a self-portrait, then yep, you have. Amazing. Amazing, Snowfalls. Good one. Anyway. So yeah, I don't know so I don't remember who it was. Also, I gotta fix my music. It's super loud, hurting my ears. I wish YouTube had a like a percentage slider, so instead of just a random slider that you can like slowly toggle down and then it snaps. I wish you could just type in the value. Like I want it, you know, if you can see that it's on 7%, you could go to 3 and you would know that it's gonna be like half as loud. Or maybe that's not quite that. But like, you know, it would get less loud. Because right now it's like, I know it could go quieter, but I don't know how to make it quieter because it snaps to 0. YouTube slider does not make it easy. Okay, so what do I have planned for today? Not really a lot, but I did. So I was not Googling. I was browsing through Google Street View, as I sometimes do. And I stumbled across this. I don't know if I feel like I've seen this place before. But I really liked it. It made me pause because I really liked, one, just the landscape looked nice, but I thought, you know what, this looks really cool. And so I thought, okay, well, and then that kind of got me into thinking, like, because very quickly I did a bunch of things in my head that I'm not, oh, here, let's move some of this stuff so we don't keep popping that up in screen. Also, let me get my chat back working. Going good. Hope you're going good. Hope for you as well. It is going well for me. It is going great. We will see how I hold up though with stream. But I don't know. I think it's gonna be a good stream. It might be a little bit chaotic, and there might be moments where like I'm not doing anything. But we'll see. So I think I'm not really sure what I want to start. I think last stream, weren't we talking about... Hey, Skittle! Weren't we talking about, like, how to decide what to study from an image, or, like... Because, like, I guess I kind of have a... I guess I can turn on my face cam. There we go. I kind of have, like, I don't know if you'd call it a philosophy, but sort of a philosophy of, like, you should paint what you want. And study shouldn't have to suck. And if you like something, then study it. But like maybe there's some self-reflecting that should be done first, which is like figure out what it is you like about it. So like if you just want to paint a scene because it quote unquote speaks to you, whatever the heck that means, maybe figure out what that means and why it speaks to you, you know? And then you can be like, oh, I really like the colors. I think it's interesting how there's different types of shapes and colors kind of that aren't normally found together, you know, or there's a little bit of vibrancy in an otherwise gray and dull environment. Like maybe there's something there that seems interesting. And like, so whatever it is, so like this image for me spoke to me because I really liked the bright white rocks. It's not often that when I paint rocks, they're the brightest thing in the image. It's very rare. Normally my sky or my direct light, I mean technically here the direct light is the brightest thing in the image, but the rocks are so bright that they're much brighter than the grass. They're much, you know, they're light. They're like the light thing in the scene. I think that's cool. They're even lighter than the road, you know, and the road is quite light. So that to me stood out. But also some of these, like, if I look at this, some of these like large clusters, I felt like those jumped out at me. I liked the shape variety. I thought, okay, so like here's a case where I could do a rock study. I could focus on shapes, but I could also focus on color. There's also something nice about the color with like the green in here, the yellows, you know, against the whites. So you get some of those darks. So like you could do kind of a value study, right? Like there's lots of things you could do. And I think it doesn't really matter. I think I would try to focus on one. So like if I were going to focus on color, I might do like color and shape or something together so that I can play around with like my own shapes, but also try to use the color to like, kind of like, here, let me take a thing. Hope. The hope is hopingly. It is hopingly. Thanks. Hope it's hopingly for you too. Hopefully. Okay, so let's open up that chat. I'm also going to open up a PureRef file. Sorry, I'm still a mess. One moment. PureRef is opening up. Oh, black screen. There, nope, that's not the screen I wanted. There we go. Okay, I think what I'm going to do here, just so I can put it on the screen, is just take an image. And also, I have this reference if anybody wants it. I have the link to it. I could share it. Share the link. And that should... Is it okay to mostly do studies of good artists instead of real life? So I think I like that question. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to tell you what to do and what not to do, right? That's not how that works. And so, yeah, I think it's okay to study other artists. But I think if you're studying other artists, you should be aware of what it is what you like about it, right? Because if you like, I don't know, like, presumably like, if you're trying to study human anatomy, maybe another artist isn't the best source, right? Because anatomy is like a fact, right? Like there are things that you know, you're trying to reference real life, right? If you're trying to learn anatomy, or if you're trying to learn about different types of plants or rocks or architecture, like humans are gonna goof that up, right? Because they're like a secondary source, right? They're not a primary source. But if you're trying to study composition or colors, yeah, study other artists, right? Like those are the ones that they're injecting their style and their colors and their shape design into, like, they're applying that to real life. So if you're learning something about stylization or how someone does compositions or how they set up, you know, how they enhance their lighting, like, yeah, study movies, study artists, study all that stuff. But I think if you're trying to do like realistic colors and you say this artist has realistic colors, I wouldn't do that, right? Be aware that like that's probably not as realistic as you want, right? So maybe they're doing things to their colors that aren't gonna be that way in real life, right? Like there could be. So I think it's, to me, I feel like it's sort of, that was weird. to me it feels kind of obvious that like different things and different images are going to be better for some. And I think real life is another good example where like real life isn't always amazing either, right? Real life has weird, confusing perspectives with like what's that? Maybe I can draw it. Maybe somebody will know. This is like here, Pictionary real quick. That maybe somebody knows what I'm talking about. But there's this island. It's like it's not as amazing as it looks in the photos, but apparently, but basically it has this from one angle, it kind of looks like this. And then there's like a lake back here, and then there's water down here. So this is like the water, you know, you have water down here. It's a giant cliff, but then off the cliff there's a lake. And so I think there's like cliffs back here as well, so it's kind of like, but it's this big sloped thing. But what I'm getting at is in this image, in the actual photo, I don't know what the place is called, so I don't know how to look it up. But basically, in this area where where this ledge is, it's oftentimes photographed from this angle. So like we're looking towards the ledge. But the problem with that is that there's this lake back here, and there's water down here. So if you get it from just the right angle where you're kind of looking down on it, you end up seeing like a lake and then the water, and you're not really sure what's happening because there's this weird drop off, but you can't see it because you're kind of above it. And it's very confusing. You're not really sure what you're looking at. That would be it's gorgeous, but it'd be an awful photo to study because you're not sure, right? So like this would be water way back here, but it's deceptively far back because this angle that you're looking at is down a slope. So like you're looking at the edge kind of. Anyway, it's really weird. I wish I would have found it before stream to think about this, but yeah, real life is not always clear, right? There's lots of weird, or like if you're doing like, if you've ever seen like group photos where like someone looks like they're missing an arm because their shirt is blending into the person next to them who has wearing a similar color shirt, and their arms being like absorbed in the composition, and you're like, wait, what's happening? Like, that's not good. You don't want to study from those. At least you don't want to study clarity of image, you know? You learn anatomy from a doctor research 3D model. Yeah, I mean, learning it from even then it's like, well, what if the model has a mistake, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of cases like this where, the OG model had a mistake and everybody after them copied it. And so you have this like little, wasn't that like a thing that map makers did back in the day called like paper towns? Basically, they'd add a fake town to their I don't know if that's their true story, but they'd add like a fake town to their map so that when another person steals their map, they also steal the fake town. And then this fake town gets propagated throughout maps because somebody did a bad thing and stole someone else's map. But like, that's kind of like, that could happen accidentally, right? You don't want to be the person who copies that inadvertent mistake. Maybe it wasn't a mistake. It probably was. It could be stylization, right? Sometimes people will, make a model to study from, but they're not studying proportions. They're studying something else. And so you don't know that. You think, oh, I'm going to study this thing because it looks so good. But what they're actually studying was like muscle groups, but you were studying proportions, and now your proportions suck because that wasn't the point of their model, right? You don't always know why someone did something. You might look at it and say, oh, I love the anatomy, it's so detailed, but really they're exaggerating things and they're pushing things so that they can understand it better, right? It'd be like if you're doing a color study for worms. I should probably put something more appealing on screen while I'm just sitting here and chatting. Like if you were doing a color study for, trying to break your warms and cools, you might get gorgeous colors, but if somebody comes along and like doesn't know why you're doing those colors, maybe they're going to pick up things and not know why they're doing them, right? Whereas if you always go back to sort of reality with things, maybe then you can compare, like find a scene that it has certain colors and then find the same scene done by an artist and try to understand where they pushed colors, where they didn't push, what did they do to their colors to make them look that way, rather than just like looking at them and being like, I want to learn to do that. You're trying to learn why are they doing that, or what are those colors doing. I don't know. Does that make sense? Because I don't know. I feel like with studying, it doesn't have to be super complicated, but also, what are we looking at? Hand? Ooh, that's a nice image. A wise man said part of being artist is decisions you make to create. I mean, I think everything, all of it is making decisions. Yeah. I don't even think part of it is making decisions. I think I guess part of it. Almost all of it, I feel like, is making decisions. And if you don't, I mean, I think like perspective is a good example, right? Where you could copy photos all day and never learn perspective, right? But perspective isn't every one of those photos. Right? You could copy this image and not understand what, you could still not know how to draw pipes in perspective. But if you understood that, like, oh, here's the horizon line. Oh, can you guys see that? Yeah. Like, here's the horizon line. This road clearly vanishes to a point where, eye level, so we're probably in a car as well. Yep, we're in a car. You can see the outline here. And so we're at car height. These things are all converging because they're all parallel. And, like, you could start... There's a fly on my keyboard. There's one fly buzzing. I hate this. Okay, anyway. But yeah, so, like, if you knew some perspective, you could then try to reconstruct this image. But what a lot of people might do, because they're not thinking about it as a study, and they're just thinking about, like, oh, this is a pretty image I want to paint. What they might do is this. Maybe they take their image... Just make it manageable. Whoops. Right? Some people might take their image and be like, okay, about halfway through my painting, at this mark is this image, right? There's my eye line. Okay. And then they say, this angle goes from the corner down to about the midway point at a whatever degree angle that is. So you're just trying to, like, mirror things. Right? So instead of trying to understand why it's going where it's going, you're just trying to make sure the angles look right. And you're like, is that angle good? And it's like a measuring technique. Measuring techniques are fine, right? I'm not hating on measuring techniques. But, like, if all you're doing is trying to reproduce an image, you're like, oh, that angle starts over, there's about this wide of a gap, so it starts about here, and it goes towards the middle, like there. And so I can just, oh, there we go. That's not understanding, like, this isn't going to help me necessarily reproduce this image, right? Or, like, in a later date, right? That might not help me, because I'm measuring. Whereas if you understand that all these lines are converging towards some, wherever the eye line is, you could redo this image, but put the eye line up here, right? Because now you still know that, you're converging, right? So we're still converging all these lines, or whatever I'm drawing, right? And then you could still draw these things, but this time they're converging here, right? And then these would converge more or less there, because they're all happen to be parallel in this case, right? But, like, you could redraw this image from a different viewpoint a little bit, it wouldn't be perfect, but, like, you could do it, right? This truck is here, and we're kind of looking down at it now. So instead of something like this, where we're at the side, we're now more looking downward, right? Again, I'm drawing this kind of funky, but you get the idea. You could reconstruct this image from a different vantage point. And I think that's the difference. It's like you're making a different choice. There's something different happening in your brain when you try to copy versus, like, what it is you're understanding. I don't know. I don't think it's that complicated, but I also think it's sort of, I don't know. I think it's easy to do studies kind of mindlessly and just, like, paint something because it's in front of you and you like it, and you like it, so you tell yourself you want to learn it, and then you just paint what's in front of you, and then you don't actually learn anything because you had no idea what you were studying. And even if you did, you may not have been thinking about it in a way that's going to help you, like, learn it. So this is where I feel like the learning part is important. Here, okay. I'm trying to decide whether I want to paint or drink tea. I want to do both, but Okay. I think the one I used before was reliable, though, considering it had options to show veins, arteries, nerves, all of these. Well, that's the thing, though, right? So if you're showing all that information isn't normally always being shown, right? Like if you look at a human, you can't always see the veins popping up and all the muscles, right? So it might have been specifically making all those things more visible than they normally are. So like, depending on what you want, it like that must they might have been accurate in like relationship wise to each other, but they also might have been more vivid. They might have been more defined. I mean, it's tough, right? It really depends on what you want. I don't know. There isn't like a right way to do it. And I don't think there's a. But yeah, I would. I think that one of the struggles with studying like quote unquote good artists is that you also don't know what they think their weaknesses are. So like it's if you're a beginner, I think it's un it how do you know what they're good at and what they're not good at if you're not good enough to tell, right? Like how can it's sort of like how can you judge whether a news story is accurate, right? Like how do you do that? How can you know if there's mistakes in it if you don't know anything about the topic? And the answer is you don't. You have to go to the source and see if the source is credible. And you don't always know because you don't know what the artist doesn't know. Like every artist is, I mean, take it from, not that I'm amazing, but take it from me or any other artist, they're always working on something. There's always going to be a part that they need to improve on. So, like, what if you're studying that part, like, I just think it's probably, if you can, going to a source is probably better. But again, some things you can't, right? Composition, what does that mean? What's a composition in real life that a person didn't design? Like, you're just looking at something and saying, I like it? Like, sure, that's a composition, but like, everything is, and a lot of things are ugly, and so there's a lot of, I don't know, like, I mean, humans decide whether, they pick the composition, right? Composition is a human thing. And so some things you can't really go to the source. So the best source is like the people who consistently make nice compositions, which the Earth is not one of them. Like the Earth has some nice looking stuff, but it also has some not nice looking stuff. Photographers are far better at picking out good compositions, and they're much more selective about it. Yeah, it's where experience comes into play. But what I'm saying is, like, if you're trying to do a study, you may not have the experience to know what you don't know. And so that's why I think still there's sort of starting at a, it's sort of like the scientific process in a way. Like, you don't do it because sometimes you think you need it. You do it because it's a reliable way of getting to answers. Even if the answer seems obvious, you still should have a good process to double check it. You shouldn't just like, yep, looks good to me. I assumed it still looks good, and it's good. Like, that's not rigorous. There could be a gap in your knowledge. There could be something that's misleading you. There could be, there could be more reasons, things that you've learned that are wrong and that you're assuming are true, so that they, it's like, it's very, having a good process is, I think, important whether or not you, like, that's kind of the point, right? You don't have to say, yeah, I think it's good. I mean, again, it's art, who cares? You don't have to be that hardcore about it, but I do feel like when it comes to trying not to learn, again, I think if you're going to study from another artist, just be aware that they could be making those mistakes, right? I don't know. I would be very hesitant to study anatomy from. I mean, I think doing comparative studies is good, where you like you can have the diagram, and then you have a photo or something, and then you try to see on the person from the photo or from real life, and you try to see what's on the diagram, and you try to like, transpose it sort of. Anyway, I'm gonna paint some of those rocks while I'm yapping, because I do like the colors. But I think what I'm gonna do. I don't remember what I liked about that. I don't think I like these. But what I'm gonna try to do is, but like even things like this, I think I think you could do a study of something and then come back years later and do a study of it again and learn totally new things, just because you're better at thinking about what you're supposed to focus or what you want to focus on. So like maybe you're looking at this stuff and like, oh, it's bright white. Also, let's pick a darker color. I'm gonna do that dark green. But like you might be more aware of like, oh, what's the lighting direction look like? And I think, in this image, I think it is like this kind of, right? Like it's sort of towards us and down, right? So we see the tops of things, right? So if we have a cube here, let's just draw. Let's just paint on, right? So if we have a cube, the top of the cube is in light. And then we have like this grayer thing, and I'm not great at this color stuff, but I'm gonna try my best. That feels too. But then we have this side, which is a little lighter, right? So this side is like partial light. So actually, this could be a little darker. And it's also greenish, right? But then you have parts that are much more red, right? That are like more, like this color or something. And they're like the underside of these rocks. If there's like, like if there's a rock, if this is the rock, there's these darker spots. If you look in here, where some of these cracks are. I'm looking like, I don't know, where am I looking right now? I guess I'll look at this. But right, there's like some cracks going in here, and obviously none of these rocks are the same shape as this. But then there's these other colors bouncing around in here. And so like to me, I would do something like this for like a quick study, where I'm trying to understand the colors, where's the blue light coming from, or is there blue light? And there is, right? There's this grayish color, maybe I make it actually blue. I don't think it needs to be actually blue. That's probably too blue. But yeah, there's some of that bluish light coming, especially down here, right on the ground. So like I'm trying to pay attention to like, I'm kind of I kind of am trying to know what to look for based on knowledge. So it's not even totally studying. Some of it's just trying to apply stuff that I've already learned. And like, okay, there's some shapes here. And again, I'm extrapolating here. But like there's that bluish color. But this is also in here. I think this is too. Maybe the background is too they call it. Maybe it's too dark, too bright. I don't know. And then the greens, right? They're very, very dark. I think they're very dark. Are they very dark? I guess the green is like the color that I already have in the background. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should take this. And make it brighter. Maybe I'll take that gray. And there's little bits of green in here poking through. So like I'm kind of doing a study where I'm trying to like learn about the colors and some of the like material, I guess, kind of, sort of. But also design some of my own shapes. And, like, maybe I'll learn something, right? There's some of these other rocks down here. This is not a very good version of it, but that's okay. There's some rocks down here with little cracks that goes diagonally. Actually, I don't like how yellow my shadows are here. I think the colors on this could be much whiter. I think they are much whiter. It's much more blown out. But there's also little, like, gaps in here, like this. There's little... And I'm painting very tiny. What's your opinion on color picking from an image? I think if you're trying to learn colors, I don't think that's great. My issue with that is that colors aren't like a monolith. Like if there's a green... If I were to zoom into this image, I don't know if I can show you very well, but like there's tons of colors. It's not just one color. What are you color picking? The average color? Are you... I mean, it's very clear. We can see there's some red, brownish colors in there. There's some greenish colors in there. There's some yellowish colors in there. Like, I'm not... And real life is even more... Like, one of the problems with photos, right, is like... Real life, the colors change because the clouds change. There's... Nothing is as static as it is in a photo. And also, the photo, even color picking isn't going to be accurate. Like, the grass isn't all one color. There's bunches of colors, right? So I don't know... I don't feel like color picking from a photo is good if you're doing anything relating to color. Because it's... Again, it also depends on what you want, right? Do you want it accurate to the photo, or do you want it sort of accurate to how your brain interprets it? Because I in real life, that's a different thing, right? The experience of being there and seeing all those vibrant colors is different. Like, there's the story, I think it was Marshall Vandruff, he told it like a year ago on a podcast, where he talks about like an exercise that he did with a bunch of students, where you would go into a natural history museum, and you can't paint in there, so you had to go and observe all these different rocks. And a couple years ago, I was in a natural history museum, and some of the rocks have like these super vibrant colors, and they're shimmering and sparkling, and they're super vibrant. But what they would do is they'd look at them, then they would do like maybe some sketches, like with they weren't allowed to paint, but they could do some, like, take some notes and do some basic sketches for shape, but they couldn't do color stuff. Then they would go outside into the sun, and where it was bright and different lighting, everything was different, and then they had to paint it. And then they would all do their painting, and they would go back in, and he said basically without fail, people would overstate the colors, right? There was this mismatch of, like, they remembered it bright, so they painted it bright, right? But really, it was just bright compared to everything around it. And, like, there was lots of things going on. But, like, I think if you're trying to understand color and what it is you experience and feel, right? All those students felt that it was very bright, so they wanted to paint it bright. And there is a difference between making it... But, again, when they painted on their page, it didn't actually look bright. It just... They were bright colors. But, like, I think my point is... I think there's a difference between trying to make something accurate and trying to make something, like, tell the story of whatever it is that you felt. Or, you know, if somebody is happy, it doesn't mean they look happy, right? There could be a mismatch there. And so if you wanted to paint them happy, maybe you exaggerate it, right? If the colors seemed vibrant, maybe it's because everything else was dull. So maybe if you're only painting the object, maybe you do have to add vibrancy to the thing so that it actually feels vibrant. Or maybe you need to give it an environment that's more dull, right? Like, I think it's kind of... Also, is this a bluer light? I don't even know. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's... I think it's probably fine to like double check occasionally, but I think if you're doing colors specifically, I don't see what you're gonna learn by color picking. Because most of color, again, the goal hopefully is not to make a good image, it's to make choices so that you can pick colors in the future, right? It's actually to learn. And so I think if the goal is to learn, then you should try to find a way to look at what you're seeing, make choices, and arrive at the right color. Right? I think it's fine to check your work, but I think having a process, like trying to guess and give a logical reason why you're picking. So, for example, maybe I don't know what color I'm looking at in here, right? Maybe I look at this, I'm like, it looks very bright, but also maybe I think it's very warm, right? Maybe I think it's warm because, well, I logically the sun is warm, right? I mean, it kind of looks like a cool color, right? It almost looks like a blue, like it's pure white. I don't know, right? I can't color pick for this. But I do know it's from the sun, and the sun tends to leans towards yellow, right? So I assume it's gonna be slightly warm, but also this stuff looks very warm, right? And this stuff looks cool. So I'm going to assume though it is a little bit warm, right? It's probably actually because it's a camera, right? It's probably auto-correcting towards pure white, which makes it feel cool. That's my hunch, is they're taking the brightest thing in the image, which is this, and this is being sort of turned on, it's being color corrected, essentially auto-focused into being the brightest thing. But I would still say, maybe it is cool. Maybe it's a cool blue, or like just a pure white. I don't know. It's hard to see. It's hard to tell. But here's the thing. I'm trying to have an internal logic of why I'm picking the color I'm picking. In this case, I think it is just pure white. But then from here you have pure white, and then you get to this coolish color. Not really cool. It's still pretty warm. But then as you get down, you get into like more warmth and stuff. So you have some cooler colors. And like sometimes I think just like making these guesses, and yeah, you can check your work later, but kind of making these guesses I find is helpful. Right, and probably what you actually have is a lot of vibrating colors, right? You have some cool colors where it's facing the sky. You have some reddish colors where it's not facing the sky, right? Because you get that bounce light from like nearby rocks that comes back and lights it. Yeah, I don't do it, but I hear some people smear. I mean, I think if you're just looking, so again, you said as a palette, and I think that's fine. Like, I think if you see images that have nice colors and you say I want to use those colors in my own painting, I think it's fine to color pick and like make a palette. But that's not the same as like learning how to get those colors on your own, or learning what the light source is. How strong is the light source? Like, I think that's a different thing, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be super serious, and I don't want to come off sounding like I'm really intense or something, but and I'm not amazing at this, and that's why I would call it a study, because there's some trial and error and me figuring things out, and I'm trying to interpret. The shapes are not the same, so I'm doing different shapes. I am using some of the same shapes, like this little triangle part here. I like, so I am introducing that. But I'm trying to like okay, in the darkest parts seemingly are more red. If they're facing this direction, which I don't really have any directions facing that way, but if they're facing that direction, there seems to be a lot of bounce light in there. Anatomy is hard. Anatomy is hard. Although I wouldn't quite call this anatomy. Although, I don't know, anatomy of a rock. That's a thing. But I'm not really... I'm not trying to focus on that at the moment. But, like, I don't know. That, to me, is... This is kind of working. There's some dark shapes in here. Maybe we go down here a bit and add some of this darker green. It does get very dark down here. But then there's some light, right? Then we have this brighter color of green, which isn't actually all that bright still. But we also get some very, very dark colors, like almost black. There's so much that doesn't make 100% sense, but enough to just get used to it. You mean in anatomy? I mean, I think a lot of it is like, for me, with doing studies, again, I'm not amazing at studies, but I think a lot of what makes doing studies work for me is is like you try to think of something in a certain way, and then you try to find patterns that sort of support your hypothesis. And maybe your hypothesis is wrong, but like, you know, if you say the light is coming from this direction, and sometimes it will bounce back, those areas where it gets light and warm is where it will be bouncing back, and where it's dark and warm is where it's not touching the sky. And if it's direct sunlight from above, like these shadows, these cast shadows, those are going to be bluer. And that seems to be what we see, right? So my sort of logic here seems to be working. And so you come up with sort of a logic, and you try to find those patterns, and you know, maybe there's another rock down here that's going to catch, you know, I'm going to do this rock right here, kind of. So I'm making a little shape. Some of that light's going to hit this direction. Right, there's going to be these shadows here. There's also stuff over here, which I'm not sure if I'm going to paint. But I will put some lighter stuff. And then we get some of those reds in here. Some of these... There's actually a lot of red in this rock. Stuff like that, maybe. But yeah, no, I mean, a lot of art is just like trying to learn some pattern recognition. Or you're trying to sort of make patterns in your brain where none existed before. But I think also a lot of it is trying to take the knowledge that you already know of stuff and sort of, like, you know intellectually why something's happening, and then you try to sort of walk through that process and explain it to yourself while making choices. Also, I haven't done these things up here. There's a bunch of reds, right? There's a bunch of red yellows. Reddish orangey colors. And I'm trying to just kind of sprinkle them in here. Still in chat, how's everyone doing? Vex Gesture, how's it going? It's going good. I am doing a bit of a study stream, kind of. Kind of trying to talk through some stuff. Just talking through, like, you know, different ways of studying what you know, one of my, you know, I'll repeat myself, but I think it's super important that when you study, you can study things that you're enjoying, as opposed to, like, oh, I have to study this. And first thing is find something you like, and then try to understand why you like it, and then... So yeah. Love a good study stream. And Angel, how's it going? Yeah, this is kind of a weird study stream, though, because I'm not doing, like, exact studies. Some of it, like this, might be more of like a color study or something. Some of it might be like, ooh, like some of this stuff, some of these rocks down here I really like, which I don't have any of that in here. So like, what if I also add some of that down here? It's like an orangey color. And so some of it's just like trying to understand stuff, you know, adding some colors. Maybe get some down here. But also, like, you know, I'm not keeping the shapes the same, but maybe I do a shape study of this. You know, maybe I see these rocks and I really like them, and so I try to understand their forms a little bit better. But that's not what this is, right? Anyway, this is my blobby study here, which I think is kind of works. I mean, it's very quick. But yeah, study streams are great. This is more of a stream talking about studying, I guess. It sort of that's sort of the goal. It's more about studying than it is me studying. Do you find it more beneficial to pick one particular thing to study, like shape, color? Sort of. Like, I think in theory there is a main priority. Like, this is, yeah, I mean, yes, I think you should know what it is. So okay, so I'm gonna repeat myself a little bit, but like, if I start by, you know, let's say I'm scrolling through Google Earth and I land on this image, I'm like, this is a really cool image, and I say, what do I like about it? Okay, well, I really like that these are white rocks. Like, because most of the time when I see rocks, they're more gray or red, right? It's not often that I see these like really bright rocks. So I really like the color of the rocks. Also, there's a lot of nuance in here. And so that to me is like, I'm going to do a color study, right? But also, maybe I do like the shapes, but maybe I choose to not. But I think ultimately you still have to make sure you're having fun to some degree. And I think sometimes that might mean, you know, maybe you do you know, depending on how much time you have, maybe you do an exact study of this rock, but maybe you do, you then extrapolate it onto your own shapes that you're designing. Or maybe you want to design the shapes, and so you just do it with lines, or not design the shapes, but you want to study the shapes of this, and so you just draw it, and you don't do any color, and you try to learn shape. Like, I don't think you have to, I don't know, I think you should have a focus. I think just doing like a full painting, like, I like this image, let me paint the whole thing. I think that's where you get into that bad habit of, you start measuring, you start, and I say measuring, not like all measuring is bad, obviously, but you end up reproducing the image as opposed to studying anything in particular, right? You end up saying like, oh, there's a rock bunch that goes diagonally at this angle across my image, and this rock is approximately right here in my composition, and this, you know, there's these shapes here, and like, you end up just reproducing the whole image instead of actually learning anything. Whereas like, if you're studying light, for example, I would study that differently than I would perspective or composition. Like, lighting is try to identify the light direction, which in this case I think it is like, you know, going over here, right? And then it's hitting this, and it's casting the shadow downward, and then we get these bright lights down here. You know, because like the shadows are down here and the light is up here, so it's kind of, I think it's coming this direction, right? You can also see it back here a little bit. There's light on these rocks, and then there's cast shadows here, so I think it's coming this direction, right? But like, even just that is already going to be better than just copying what you see without any sort of like, this is a focus on light, right? If you're just doing like color or something, I don't know. I think it's easy to fall into like a copy mode. And I don't think you want to be a copier if you're trying to get something out of it. But anyway, that's my ramble. But no, I think it also just depends on what you're studying. I don't think you should study everything the same. Like, I think photo studies are great for things that are composed in some way. Like I think they're great for, or even like structural things. So like anatomy, I think it's good for, where like you're drawing the whole thing in its entirety because you're trying to like piece it together, sort of. Um, for color, I think obviously painting, oftentimes color is done at the end anyway, so like you're probably going to need some structure, so might as well get there. But I don't know, for a lot of things, I don't think you even need to do a real study or like a full painting. I think you could like for composition, I think you can do sort of a dissection where I don't have a good image with a good composition here, but you could sort of break it up and figure out where's the focal point number one, focal point number, try to think about what's the second important thing in the image and how do they relate, and just answer a lot of questions like what's the story, and then you would write it out and like just kind of do like almost like an autopsy type thing where you're methodically going through and sort of figuring out like what is the story, what is the mood, do the mood and the story relate, if so, what colors are used in the mood to make that mood moody, or what is the perspective, does the perspective relate to the story, like does it does it play with the sense of scale, does it do the things that make the image work, and basically just go through all the points and sort of try to ask questions about how is this contributing to the overall impact of the image. And some of them might not and some of them might, and if they do, then those are the things you pay attention to, and you just basically think about them and go through the process of thinking about, like, I'm not sure how much just painting a nice composition is going to make you understand how to use composition and different ideas in your own painting. So I don't know. I don't know if that made sense. Do you think used pick color is a trap for studying color? I think it is for studying color. Yeah, I think picking color, I mean, I think it's a good way to check your work and like how close are you. But I think something I've noticed so I've actually, okay, so I'm going to tell a random story. It might be a stupid story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So I use Duolingo. I don't pay for it. I use the free version. But I have noticed that I mean, that's not even just a me thing. It's just like a well-known fact of learning. But like if you just cheat before you ever actually learn, like before you actually guess, you're much less likely to actually learn, right? You don't want to go and click on, if you don't know a word, don't click on the word to see what it is and then then type out the answer. Guess and try to understand and think to yourself, why do I think it's this word? What things might make me lead, like what about the word makes me think that this is the right word? And even if it's a totally made up thing, just like this word sounds like potato in English, and I remember that the words don't sound the same, and so I think it's this word is for potato, something like that. And then you guess, and then you'll either get it right or wrong, and then that will be the checking, and then you'll go back and be like, okay, that's where I went wrong, and then you'll start remembering it. So I think it's fine to check your work by using color picking, but I think I would do it later, and I would also, if you get it wrong, make sure you go back and sort of like refix your logic. So for example, the logic for lighting might be the sun is pretty warm, so I think this light tends towards warm. But also maybe it's more neutral because it's color corrected, so I'm not sure if it matters. But let's call it a warm light. Then you might say, okay, well, what about the shadows? Well, the shadows, some of them like this seem to be pretty cool, and my hunch is that these are all the things that are directly above the sky. So this is directly above the sky, these are above the sky, right? Anything that isn't directly above the sky seems to tend to more towards like a yellow, which might be because the light is being bounced in from indirectly from the light, right? So you get like a cool shadow, you get a warm shadow, and then you get a warm light, right? But let's say I go and color pick, and these actually aren't warm. Well, my theory that these are coming from the sky doesn't work, right? That does, at least, there's something wrong, right? There's a missing information there. I thought it was coming from the sky, so this part should be cool, but apparently it's a little warmer. Why is it warmer? Maybe there's also some bounce light coming in. Okay, well that could explain it. What about in other spots? Like, in this case, it's not. I think I haven't actually color picked, but let's see. I have a hunch. Like, relatively speaking, this is like a green gray, and then this is like a literal brown, right? So yeah, I mean, this is obviously cooler. This is obviously warmer. I think my theory there worked, right? Yeah, I mean, I also want to say, like, I think if you're one, I guess I'm not hating on. I'm trying not to do like a me hating on people stream because I think that's really not helpful to anyone. But one thing I'm not a huge fan of is the color studies, and I'm using air quotes, the color studies that are like purely observational, but there's no thought process. It's more like training your eye to see rather than training your brain to think. And it's that kind of bugs me a little bit. Like, I think it's useful if you're outdoors painting, where like you see a color and maybe there's some context clues and stuff, and you're just trying to put the right color on the canvas. And I guess if you're outside, maybe understanding why the color is what it is how you get to that way of like seeing. But I feel like it's less important to be able to see through the optical illusion and pick the right value or pick the right color than it is to understand how you would build that image up if you were painting it, right? Like, first recognizing something is in, for example, let's say I'm gonna paint I don't know, a cube, right? Here's a square. Well, actually, let's do it this way. We'll do the inverse, right? So, like, here's the square, here's our light. Like, first, just recognizing this is in the light, right? Like, instead of worrying about the exact value, because again, like I think picking the exact value is less important than understanding like big groups, and then you might say, okay, well, these are all in light, but this side has a little bit less light, so it's going to be a slightly less bright, right? This side actually has quite a bit of extra light coming in, right? And so it's a little bit brighter because it's coming in from the sun, right? Instead of just trying to like eyeball the thing and pick it the first time, that's not how you paint. You don't just start in a corner, pick the perfect color for your tree, and paint it. Like, no, a lot of times you do flat colors, and then you add a shadow, and then you might add some lighting. Like, having a process that is more like relevant to how you actually paint, I think is way more useful. I don't think it's all that useful to purely do observational, like trying to pick the exact color. Like, is that how you paint? I don't think you just pick the right color. You typically do like flat colors, or you might start with shadow and light, and then you add the colors into it. Like, there's especially if you're painting digitally, there's a lot of different ways to paint things that isn't just pick the right color that you see, right? And I think having seems methodical. Well, I mean, typically when you're building your own painting, it is, right? Like, for example, if I'm gonna paint something, say, I don't know, doesn't matter what it is, I might start with like, okay, maybe you start with values, or maybe you don't, maybe you do it all at once. But if I'm just starting painting, I might start with like, oh, a blue sky. Okay, it's kind of blue, but I know it needs to be lighter. Oh, meant it positively? Gotcha, yeah. Well, it's more like you're trying to find a process that aligns. Like, see how I'm already doing like a foreground, midground, background here, and they're in different values? That doesn't mean... Here, let's do this in a bit better way. Right, this doesn't mean that this is how it's going to end up. This is just a starting point. Maybe I do want some brighter colors in here, Maybe then I'm going to add my lighting in here, right? But I did notice how I didn't just put the lighting right away. People overlay and use effects anyways, right? Yeah, exactly. And if you like to use effects and overlays, then like I think doing that in your study is fine, and trying to understand when and how you might set something up, rather than just, if I'm going to paint a tree in here, picking just the right value first time. Like, why? Why not build it up, make my tree shape, pick my colors, oh, I know it's going to be like a greenish color. You can get pretty close, but I know my greens are going to get a little brighter and more desaturated in here. So maybe I build it up like that. Maybe some of the bark in here is kind of like this grayish, brownish color. Like maybe that's a better way to build it up than just try to pick that grayish brown color right at the start, right? Like, I don't think that's... I don't know how I would ever use that in my own painting. Now, what it might do is if you are aware of these things, maybe like you could then color correct your own image to like get towards that point because you kind of know what it should be. Like maybe that's a thing where like if you see that you're painting with super saturated blues, you're like, in all of my color studies, this is never a blue. Every time I think it's blue, it's actually more like this. So maybe you color correct to this, right? So I guess that could be a use for it. But I think there's a lot of, I don't know. It also reminds me of, there's this YouTuber called Steven Travers, who is pretty great. He does like observational drawing. So he's not teaching you how to construct. Also, why is my music so loud? I don't know. Yeah, so Steven Travers, he's interesting because he does a lot of observational drawing, and he doesn't teach you how to construct your image. I don't like drawing like him, right? My goal is not just to do observational drawing. My goal is to build my own painting, basically, right? Is to sketch it. If I have an idea or some concept of an idea, I can then start to design it and build it and paint it, right? I can make my own painting the way that I want. That's not something that he does, right? And so I don't know if he's ever done color, because I know he uses a lot of like pen, but my hunch is if he was doing color, he would try to like measure his color, and he would do all these like old painterly techniques. I just don't see how that's useful if you're trying to construct your own image. If you're outdoors painting from life, sure, right? Trying to get a good eye for what you see is useful, but that's not going to help you reconstruct it later. Not necessarily, anyway. And so I do love his channel, but I think, and he actually makes a very specific point, that he's not teaching perspective like an engineer, right? And one of his gripes was that, he didn't have a lot of channels that were talking about how to identify perspective in nature, because they were all teaching you how to design and build up a cube from the ground up, right? Well, I like the cube method because that's how I paint. I paint starting with nothing. But if you're always starting with something, it's important to learn how to apply those concepts, like if I were to put a cube in here, where does it go? I can't just paint it however I want. That's not going to look, that's not going to look right. But if you understand things like the horizon line and, these lines need to converge towards that horizon line, right? Like, then you could start, painting your cube, and you could, you could make a cube. Well, it can go a little brighter in here. But anyway, like this is more what Steven Travers does, where like and I like that. I like that idea. I like the idea that he's teaching you how to take what you already have and sort of understand it in a way that you can then build some things in it, right? And you can then paint what's in your scene by understanding that this truck could fit into a cube, right? It could fit into a cube or a square, right? If you knew that this was the midpoint of the truck, he'll teach you how to find that midpoint, right? But he's not going to teach you how to build this truck on a blank page, right? He's not going to say just, like, it's kind of backwards, right? It's the same thing, but it's the same knowledge applied in a different way. Anyway, I think it's useful, but it is, No, it's different. Anyway, I'm rambling. There are so many concepts that you are explaining that are clicking for the first time for me. Thanks for explaining me the thought process. No, I appreciate it. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of jumping all over because this isn't really a teaching stream. This is more of just me going over like different ways to study and what that even means, because it does frustrate me a little bit when, I mean, this is coming like, I even knowing what some people are doing, because like I follow a lot of artists on, say, Twitter, and I will see all these people saying, oh, here's a study, and it's like, I don't actually know what they're studying. Like, I think I knew, I can guess, but I don't actually know if they learned anything. All I am assuming is that they were looking at a photo and they were painting it, but they also changed things, and it looks really good now. But I don't actually know what they were getting out of it. I don't know what their focus was, and it doesn't help me to look at that, right? If I didn't know what I know, I think I would be extremely confused. Meant to say, somehow creating something from nothing is more admirable. Oh, I don't think it is. I don't think it's more admirable. I just think it's a difference between... No, I just think it's... I wouldn't argue... No, I don't think it's more admirable. I mean, I think there are... Like, if you were to take all the skills and lay them out and write them out, you know, there might be a few additional ones. There probably is some that you are not using that you are in, like, purely observational drawing. There's probably some skills that you're not using that you do, or that you use in observational drawing that you don't in, you know, like constructive drawing or whatever you want to call it. But no, I don't think it's more admirable. I just think it's a different skill, and I think there's different things you have to think about. No, and I don't want to say no amount of just drawing from life will get you there, but it's possible that no amount of drawing directly, not just from life, but just observational drawing, will get you to the point where you understand the things in a way that you can build them up, right? I think they're just like, the foundational knowledge is kind of the same, but they're dealing with like two sides of the same coin. It's not thinking through what they're doing. Yeah, I mean it's thinking about other things, right? It might be thinking about matching the colors or matching the vibe of the colors, right? That's important. But it might be less about structure because it's right there in front of them and they can just paint what they see and then the structure will be right. Copying too much is also a trap because then you rely... Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm trying to sort of pinpoint, right? Is that I think you can copy too much without even realizing it, right? I mean, I might be, and this is where I think like I know like Jeremy, what's his name? Something, the color dude, Vickery, I think is his name. I think he does a good job at this, where he had a video that we watched a couple weeks ago, or not a couple weeks ago, last year probably, where he was talking about sort of taking a photo or a painting, seeing something in that painting, and then extrapolating it to your own thing. And that's kind of what I'm doing here, right? So this study of a rock are these rocks, but it's clearly not the same rock, right? And there's changes that I'm making, there's things that are different. It's very clearly not the same. And that's intentional, right? I'm not trying to paint the exact same things. And yes, I'm color picking my own image right now. Active learning, which is why I sometimes hate studying because of how much energy and activeness it is. Yeah, and it should be tiring and it should be difficult. And I think that's yeah, and I sometimes think that for some people when they say they're doing studies and it's more therapeutic, like I kind of question, like, I mean, again, I don't really care if people call it a study and if it's not a study. I just think that other people might be like there might be some like fallout, right? You might have young students think that that's how the pros got to where they are, and then you end up sort of repeating these steps that aren't necessarily going to get you there. And I think that's really sad. I think that's not... There should be again, painting is making choices, it's decisions, and I think if you're not actively working on those decisions, you're probably not getting out of it what, everything you could. I'm just making little shapes here. This has nothing to do with the study. This is just me making shape designs. It's about understanding why. Yeah, exactly. It's about understanding why. And that's the same thing why I think color picking is bad. It's not inherently bad, but it doesn't teach you why. You at least need to guess at why, and then sort of maybe you do research when you find out that you're wrong, and maybe ask some people. I mean, I think a good example, Ghibli does this a lot. Somebody was talking about the pea-colored AI slop that people noticed when all the Ghibli stuff was being consumed by the AI models. And like one of the things Ghibli does really well is that, so let's back up. Normally, if you have like a blue sky, you will have blue light shining into the shadows, right? And so your shadows will have like a bluish tint to them, right? But sometimes, like in this image, right, you might have reddish shadows because you have yellow light bouncing off of an object back into the object, right? And each time the light bounces, it gets weaker, and because it does lean towards yellow, you actually can get a lot of these like orangey colors bouncing in here. So you can actually get, and also it could just be orange, but you could get some of these like orangish light colors bouncing into certain spots, right? And so the only light that's going to make it into the shadows might be that bounce light, because again, that direct blue skylight isn't making it in to all the shadows. It might make it in here, right? The blue light might make it in these areas, but it's not necessarily good. And it might, some of it might make it on these surfaces, but it's not all gonna hit these surfaces, right? 'Cause these surfaces are angled a little bit. And so any light making it here is gonna probably be a little bit warmer. But anyway, Ghibli, one of the things about a scene that feels really warm is oftentimes having a lot of this like ambient bounce light. So what they oftentimes do is instead of having these very blue shadows where it would be blue, they basically are taking... Here, let's see if I can do this properly. I'm going to make this a little brighter. Nope. We'll go like that. So normally they would have their sky nice and blue. They have their grass nice and green, right? But normally it would be a little green-blue. But what they oftentimes do is they basically take an airbrush with orange and just slap it in all of everything. They're basically putting in this warm light into not all of the shadows, but a lot of the shadows. And so their entire scene feels like it's radiating this warmth. Like there's just bounce light everywhere. It's super vibrant and cheery. And it looks great, right? But if you don't know why you're doing that, you might think, well, Joe just told me that you have blue in the shadows. Why is there not blue in the shadows, right? Sometimes there's blue in the shadow, right? In real life, there's oftentimes blue in the shadows if you're outside, or it's grayish if you're, if it's a gray sky or whatever. But sometimes that's not the case. And you can do that by a choice, by putting in this warm bounce light. Maybe you have a building, Sometimes Ghibli is really good about it, though. If they have like a building here, they'll make everything on this side very warm because it's bouncing off the building. So you have this light bouncing in. And that's like a really nice way to light your scene. It makes it nice. But anyway, my point is, you should hopefully recognize that, like, if you're doing a Ghibli study, something should click. You should be like, or not click, an alarm bell should sound and say, why is the light behaving this way? I don't understand it. What is happening? Right? Because it's not always perfectly logical. Sometimes they're fudging things. and they do it for a reason, but like if you never paid attention to why light does it in the first place outdoors, you're certainly never going to pay attention to it in a, you know, in a Ghibli color study. And of course they don't always do that, but like, you know, they can do that and they have done that. So anyway, I think that's interesting to me because it's sort of like a one, you're never going to catch that unless you pay attention to those things. And by paying attention to them, now it's a choice that you can make, right? Now I can say, you know what? What if in this painting I added a little bit of warmth in here? Just like that, just to brighten it up a little bit. They're made by a team, not by one person. Sure, but you can still have like choices be made in a consistent way. I mean, in some ways, a pipeline of people doing a thing is how you can get that consistency, right? You get somebody who does line work or something in a certain way where it's going to be very consistent because it's always done by one person. Then the lighting is always consistent because it's done... I mean, yes, it is by a team, but a lot of times having that pipeline makes you streamline it even more because you have sort of specializers and people who are... It's such a highly, I don't know, careful project or process. Yeah, I don't know how Ghibli designs their stuff, whether it's by one person or by a team or what. But that's not really relevant to what I'm saying. It's mostly just I think being able to make choices. I mean, even if it was done by one person, the only way that you personally will ever be able to like make consistent work is if you have a way of doing things to where you understand it. So like when you go to pick colors, it's not just random, right? You have some sort of internal logic of doing that. There's just someone that controls the look of the film. Oh yeah, of course. Absolutely. Also, what I really like about this, which I'm not including in my own image, is some of these greens. So I'm just gonna go like this, and now I'm just kind of painting this. And I realize this is not how the image looks. This is where a jitter brush could be kind of nice. Maybe there's a little bit of some rocks in here. Something like that. I'm just trying to put in some color jitter, some variety in here, some light, some dark. In Ghibli, the director also acts as the art director in storyboards. It used to be one or two individual painting the backgrounds. I highly recommend watching the documentaries. Oh, I'd like that. Yeah, I should definitely do that. Also, that damn artisan, how's it going? You were looking and felt compelled by the Ghibli. Yeah, I mean, I don't... My only point... I don't actually know that much about Ghibli. All I know is sometimes their color usage is really interesting, and they do like to add a lot of warmth into the colors. And it was funny that when people brought up the whole AI yellow urine color slop, and I thought, you know, that's funny because I have done a color study of some Ghibli scenes, and I distinctly remember being sort of aware of like the extra warmth in the shadows. And I think that's funny that the AI picked up a yellow tint to everything. I don't know if it's because of Ghibli or not, but anyway, I just thought it was funny because like a lot of that is a thing that happens a lot where like you add a warmth to things, and yeah, if you just do it without knowing why, then and you don't control it, then it's gonna look terrible. So I just thought it was funny. Also, what am I doing here? I'm not painting this exact scene. I'm sort of just playing around with colors and stuff now. But yeah, that's. I think I'm about ready to wrap up this little mini study. I don't even know if you call it a study. This really is. I mean, this was a study. Now this is more me practicing something else, which is like composition and shape design, because this is not the thing that I'm actively painting now. So I think that's another thing with studies is like you can get multiple things out of it. I don't think you have to be super isolated and like this is just for color, but you should be aware of when you're no longer doing the study. You know, when are you changing topics and what is your focus on? And I think I think there's a lot of ways. I think when we're talking about study, because I think every once in a while, well, I'll do like I only know it called like the OODA loop, but basically it's the learning cycle where you do like you learn stuff, or get educated. I'm just gonna write it out. Get educated. So that's like, you know, books. That's not how you write it. Okay, books. You know, videos. You know, school, right, or whatever, like tutorials maybe. Tutorials. I can't spell very well, right? So that's like the first step, and then there's like maybe I don't know if I'm gonna do the order correctly, but like there's also the observe, right? So you observe it, observe, and you know this is where you observe the things that you just learned, right? You observe the lessons, you observe the knowledge, right? And you just pay attention, think about it, right? There's apply it, right? Apply. And this is, you know, do the drawing. But again, do the drawing about the stuff that you just observed, about the stuff that you just learned, and then you analyze it, right? And then you say, okay, where did I go wrong? What, you know, what didn't work? If you discover that like, oh, you know, I really liked my colors in here, but my values were terrible. Well, then you go back, you learn a lesson on values, you get educated, you go back to observing values, and then you try it again and apply your values, right? This time you apply it, but now you focus on values. And then at the end, you analyze it. Say, did that work better? What worked? What didn't? What do I need to do? And then you keep learning, right? It's just a big cycle. And the reason I'm saying this is because a lot of times things like a study are multiples, right? So, a lot of studies are observation and application, but it's kind of assuming that you already know this stuff, right? And like, if you don't already know perspective, how can you possibly go and apply and observe perspective? What are you even observing, right? You don't even know what to observe because you're not aware of the concepts. So like, a lot of studies are only going to be a couple of these. Like sometimes they're analytical and observational, and you're also applying it. But a lot of times this first one, this like, you know, learn some theory, a lot of times that's missing from studies, right? So this is where I think, you know, I'm still, I love studies. Studies are great, but I think they can be a little misleading for like a beginner because you can't just say go study color and expect them to reinvent color theory on their own without them ever having to learn it. Like maybe first go watch some videos, go read some books or watch some videos on color theory, or go watch a tutorial on how to think about and apply color theory, and then observe it and then apply it, and then, you know, then do your study, right? And different types of studies are going to be, some of them are not so much observational. They're more like, I guess analytical could be analyzing the observation. But, you know, most studies I think are observational and application. But sometimes people just observe and apply it without really thinking about what they're applying, which again, I'm kind of this is not really what I mean by that. Really observing is thinking about what you're applying, right? But I would argue that even just copying is sometimes just applying a thing without really observing it, right? Hey, Rihanna, how's it going? So anyway, that's my rant. Rihanna, it's been a while. Hello, hello. Hope you're doing well. Hello, Mr. Pepper. How's the arting going? The arting is going well. I am rambling about studying and how I like to think about it, and how I think studying can be kind of this catch-all term that is, quite frankly, it can be a little misleading. I don't. What are the ways you personally like to educate yourself? I mean, I'm poor, so I like YouTube. YouTube is great. There's so much knowledge on YouTube, and you do have to like sift through a bunch of stuff, and time. I think like time for money is kind of the trade-off, right? Um, like sometimes, if you don't have a lot of money to spend on like super high quality education, like you can do a pretty good job just by watching a ton of YouTube. And some of the information is going to be higher and lower quality, but like as a whole, the information will be there and you'll have to sift through. Um, yeah, there's so much stuff on YouTube. And again, some of it's not amazing, but if it doesn't work, then like move on to something else, and more information the better, and so don't just get all your info from one source. Rihanna, I'm sorry to hear that. You said you had a bad year. Next year will be better. I hope it is. But yeah, so I think, yeah, YouTube is definitely my favorite. I mean, I have a handful of books too. The best book, this is the best book. Everybody should have it, in my opinion. Not sponsored by James Gurney. But it basically goes through everything, pretty much everything that artists could probably, not everything, but a lot of the stuff that they would possibly need to know about color and light. And like each page of the book, I'm not gonna like go through the whole thing, but it starts through just with like history and tradition of lighting. Then there's different movements, but then they talk about sources of light, and so he goes through like overcast lighting, different types of light, and how different types of light are going to have different properties, from candlelight to window light to firelight to street light and night lighting conditions. You can't see any of this. Luminescence, hidden light sources. He talks about like where light might be that you may not even realize it is, and then he talks about all the things like the color wheel, of course, and like how to, I can't even show this properly, like how to think about the color wheel, how light interacts with things, loco color, the green problem is in there, basically just talks about everything you pretty much would need to know. And it's kind of, I think, I don't know if this is true, but I'm pretty sure he's sort of the one who like bridging the gap between the cover one more time. Yeah. Sorry if this is like, I need a bit better way to show this. Color and light. It's called Color and Light by James Gurney. But so his book here, I have a command for this, by the way. It's called Learn. No, it's not it. There we go. Those are like some of the main books that I recommend. There's a bunch of books, but those are some of the main ones. Color and Light, Imaginative Realism, Picture This, How Pictures Work, and Creative Illustration. The authors in order are James Gurney, Molly Bang for Picture This, How Pictures Work, and Creative Illustration is by Andrew Loomis. Yeah, James Gurney. Yep. Hey, Frostern! Long time no see. Or maybe not long time. I don't know. Hi. Hope you're doing well. But anyway, James Gurney's book, it's also the book that kind of, in my opinion, at least it taught me sort of instead of thinking just about pigment, you're thinking about light, and you're thinking about how light and color interact, and it's not just, this color is this color. It's this color is, like a gray sidewalk isn't gray. Cheesy says hello too. Hello, Cheesy. Like a gray sidewalk is not just a gray sidewalk, right? This street is not, you might look at it and say, is it gray? But like, which gray? Is this the part that's gray, or is this the part that's gray? Well, this part is a little blue, right? You can even see on the color wheel. And this part is a little, well, green, but let's just call it yellow because it clearly is leaning on this upper end of the... It's very warm, right? So we got a warm gray, right? Literal, like, yellow-green warms up here. And then down here, it's literal blue-grays, right? The Realist Painter by James Gurney. Is that the full title? A Guide for the Realist Painter. Yes. Yeah, that's the full title. Thank you. You've actually been full stream, you didn't say anything? I see. But anyway, so, like, I think James Gurney is one of the people who got me thinking of, like, just because your brain says that is red, doesn't mean that that is red, right? This is a red fire truck. Well, if I were to ask you what color this is, would you say red? If I were to ask you what color this is and you could see my color picker, you might actually say it's orange. But neither of those are true because it's actually red, right? But it's red, but you're looking through this green tinted thing. Up here, it's pretty red, right? This looks pretty red, but which one of these is the color of the fire truck, right? Well, this one isn't, for sure, because that's not even in the image. But, like, right? Like, there's different colors here. And also, this color doesn't, it kind of looks orangey. But in context, around this green, then it starts looking red, right? So, like, this orangey color is red, but it's surrounded by green. And I think that's cool. And so, I think James Gurney got me thinking of, like, it's all an optical illusion. Everything you see is a lie, like, basically just double check, like, question what you see, don't just call something brown because, don't go reach for your brown tube of paint just because it looks brown to your brain, right? Your brain might see a tree trunk, it might be more gray than brown, right? Or you see green grass and you might want to grab your green paints, maybe it's more like this color, and it's actually not very green. That's very, very yellow. In fact, not only is it yellow, there's a lot of red in here, right? There's a lot of, like, yellow-red colors. And so it really isn't very green, right? You get a lot of colors like this that are, like, these dark yellows. And so, yeah, that's it can be deceiving. But, like, you might look at this and be like, oh, look at all that green. I love green in these, here, let me make it larger for you. Right, this green and white color palette, right? Like, isn't that gorgeous? But, like, there's really not that much green in here. It's kind of yellow, but it looks green. It looks pretty vibrant, actually. There's little splotches in here. Volume 2. Volume 2 of what? This says Color and Light. A Guide for the Realist Painter. There is another book called Imaginative Realism, which I have, but I'm not going to pull it off my shelf because it might pull my entire shelf off because it's a little bit unstable. Actually, no, I have it here. It's probably a little dusty. This one. Then there's this. This book I don't recommend for, like, a beginner. This feels much more intermediate to me because he does a lot of, like, name dropping. It's more about process than it is, like, how to paint. But this book is also great. It's also by James Gurney. How to Paint, it's called Imaginative Realism, How to Paint What Doesn't Exist. So this is more like process. It goes through how some old-timey people did stuff. How they gathered references, a lot of that. I think it's super useful, but it's less about, like, the fundamentals and light and color and stuff, and it is much more just, like, different processes to, whether it's building models or using 3D. I don't know if he talks about 3D. Talks about a lot about model building, hiring models, starting with a sketch to figure out what you need. He does. I think he calls back to, like, animators, and, like, how they would do their sketches with big loose gestures, but then they'd go and grab models and take photos and do whatever they needed to do. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did the Dinotopia book. He's the Dinotopia artist. Okay, let's do another sketch of some place. Let's do some Google mapping. Ooh, this is a nice place. So, but what I'm doing, because I'm not studying a specific thing today, what I'm doing is I'm just gonna go until I say, oh, this is awesome, and then figure out what I like about it, and then study that thing, right? I like this. So, for example, ooh, this is nice, and then I say, oh, it's the colors. Clearly, it's the colors that I like, right? I love these colors. That's these super saturated colors. Those are neat. Maybe I want to, maybe I want to do a scene like this, and where I get these saturated colors in here. Right? There's something about this that is a neat, there's something neat about this. Maybe this is too bright. I don't know. But if I try to then compose this image in a way that looks nice, maybe I could do a little mini study of like these trees, but get this nice light shining on top. Also, one of the things I'm noticing now is like I was kind of looking for the blue sky. You can't really see it in here, right? There is like the blue sky is not very blue. Some of it feels a little blue, but I don't know where that's coming from. But like there's this warmth up top, and then it's cooler down below, and I like that. And so maybe there's a way. So yeah, maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll print screen here. I'm just gonna copy this. I'll also put this in the. I'll put that in chat if anybody is interested. There we go. But anyway, that's that's something I might do a little quick study of. And again, this will be more color, but maybe shape. Maybe I try to take apart some of these trees. There could be some fun stuff in there. That's something I like to do as well. I don't know. I typically combine things like color and shape together. You don't have to. Yeah, it really just depends. I'm a big fan of studying what you want, or like paint what you want. It doesn't matter what it is. Literally just paint something. Except when you start painting something that you don't know what it is, then go and get references, right? I think that's the best way to study from references, is you sort of treat it like a mini study. You say, I want to paint robots. And then as you start painting robots, you're like, I don't know how to paint metal. And then you grab some photos of armor to see how shiny metal works, and then you can make your shiny robot, right? Because, like for example, imagine you were the OG designer of C-3PO. Is that the name? C-3PO, right? The golden Star Wars robot. But imagine you were designing that from the ground up, and you're like, I want this to be a super shiny robot. Well, what are your references? How do you get references? Probably suits of armor, right? Like, or big metal shiny spheres or something. Like, and so sometimes you can just draw what you want, but then get material references or get design references from other things. So yeah. That's a thing. Iron Man was based on a sports car? Exactly, right? The sleek, the shapes, the colors, that fire truck red. Like, yeah, totally understandable. And so that would have been a perfect reference for it, right? It's a sports car from the shininess. Again, they could have made it very matte and beat up, and you know what they could have used for it? I'm going to show you an image. Imagine instead of a sleek, red, shiny car, imagine if this was the reference they got for Iron Man. Right? Now, he's not shiny, he's rusty, he's much more massive and not so sleek, right? He has these big chunky shapes. Like this feels much more like the one he built in the cave, right? This feels like a not a sports car, but like it didn't feel like a sports car, right? It didn't have these like the convertible tops and now that retracts or whatever, or those wings on the cars that like lift up. I don't know what you call them, the wing doors on like the fancy expensive cars. Like, but imagine instead you use this as your reference, right? You have this like matte rubber look material on it. You have these old rusted things, like these big chunky shapes. Like that would be a totally different vibe. And you could use this for painting metal, but you're certainly not going to get the shiny metal from a sports car. But yeah, like you get these oil splotches and this, like, look at all the oil and the gas probably dripping everywhere when they fill it up. Like you can almost smell the gasoline on this thing, or the diesel or whatever. Like you can just, I feel like you can just smell it. Anyway. But yeah, so like that to me is interesting because it's yeah, you don't have to have the reference of the thing you're painting. I mean, again, obviously if you want to learn how to paint a sports car, don't grab a picture of Iron Man, right? Because that's, if you want to paint a sports car, then maybe start with sports car. Okay, so this image is, we actually do have a bright white background. And then we have dark shapes. I don't know if I want the whole thing white. I have a hunch I don't. I'm actually going to go a little bit bluer down below. I don't know if we can see this in here, but I do sense a blue, like a much cooler tone down here. So I'm just going to make that gradient right at the start, because I could see myself setting up a painting this way. Actually, I'm going to go much darker. Well, no, I don't think I need to. And just making some trees. These trees don't have to be anything in particular, but also these trees, they're not like this, right? They're very warm up here, so there's these nice gradients. There is none of that cool shapes up here. So actually, let's get rid of this, and let's just paint these. But then we do get some darker colors here. But then it quickly turns to warm again. But yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to study, and I think, honestly, it doesn't really matter too much so long as you're trying to think about why things are the way they are, and how you might draw it in such a way that you could actually repeat it. Maybe that means drawing it multiple times. You know, I don't think it really matters. Also, this fly is bugging me. Why is he only... it's a different fly, obviously. It must be, because it didn't survive the last however long. It's been like a couple weeks since it's been around. But my goodness, I feel like only when I stream. It's probably been around, but I just didn't notice. Maybe I should have opened my window so I could get out. Or maybe that's the problem, that I opened my window. Anyway. Okay, now, let's, I don't know if this is going to look good, but I'm going to start putting some blue-greens down here. Flies must be the reason the word bugging exists. They do make you bug out, don't they? Swatting flies. I need like a rolled up newspaper. Yeah, maybe. They do make you bug out. They make you go crazy. They start swatting the air. You look like a lunatic. A certified loon. and some of these are pretty yellow, but I'm afraid of going too yellow too fast. And part of this also, so this is an interesting study, if you want to call it a study, because I don't really know exactly what I'm going to get out of it, but I do think shape and how I simplify, because it's a very busy scene, right? And it actually, this image doesn't feel like that. The way I like to start my images with the feeling, like the vibe, and so maybe I'll try to get the vibe first, right? Because this is more how I paint. And so what if I start with this and I work my way down? I'm working my way down. Is that the right vibe? Hmm. You know, I actually think these are a lot darker. But I can't speak. But what we actually see is the darkness of these darker leaves, but we have a lot of these light leaves on the outside that are almost the same value as the white. So we actually have this very bright, almost like neon color on the outsides, I think. I think that's what I'm saying. And maybe I just use a texture brush here. But then also what we do have is this very, very bright color. Poking through. So here's the tree branch that we're going to paint. Get some light in here. Light there. Some of these greens can definitely go that way. But I'm trying to sort of paint alongside some of these branches, put some little blobs of Oh, what's happening? We're getting raided. Sir Drakir, how's it going? Welcome. Caffeinated Vampires raid. Oh, I see. That's the emote wasn't working. I was like, what is happening? That is a raid call. Yeah, how's it going? Let's get rid of this. I'm not doing thumbnails today. I'm doing it for sure. Welcome in. How's it going, everybody? Hope you're doing well. Yeah, we are kind of painting. I mean, just photo study is going to necessarily be as effective. But yeah, just like, you know, whether it's a color study or, you know, you're trying to do like, you know, get realistic colors, or maybe you're trying to just do like vibe stuff, you know. Sir Drakir, I'm doing good. How are you doing? I'm doing really well. Today is a good day. We are, yeah, we're just painting, talking about art and painting and studying and knowing how, you know, like basically trying to learn in such a way that you can make choices for what it, you know, so that you can actually use it when you're painting your own stuff. Yeah, I don't know if you'd even, I mean, some of these are studies. And again, this stream is less about me doing studies and more me talking about studies, because I'm not specifically trying to learn a certain thing in these. Like, I kind of am in this, but like, if you look at the actual reference, which was this, right, I didn't paint the same thing. Right, so this was more of like, I like the colors here, and I like the lighting of some of these rocks, and so I kind of did my own rock and applied some of this stuff. And again, is it perfect? Absolutely not, right? It has issues. There's probably, you know, it's very, very rushed. There's a lot of little dark spots in here that I should have probably put, but I didn't. Um, but yeah. So that's the thing. But yeah, this is kind of like my sort of, you take a thing and you try to apply it in another way, and yeah. So a lot of my studies are like that, where I just want to paint what I like, but I want to try to take something out of it, and so I try to ask myself, what do I like about it? In this case, like, I like the colors. I really like these vibrant colors up here, and so maybe there's a way that, like, how can I get the vibe quickly in this? And is there a way that I can sort of learn something that I can take from it so that I can get this vibe in my own paintings? Great way to use reference. Yeah, I mean, I think it just also helps you make choices rather than saying, like, what is that color? And then you take the color and put it on your canvas. Like, that's not how you paint, right? That's not how I paint anyway. If I want to paint, I'm starting with, like, values and building up shapes and putting a light on it and maybe having some color. And, like, I want to be able to get to this point without just picking random colors, right? I want to say, oh, there's a little bit of blue in the shadows because it's the sky. Then there's some bounce light, which makes this a little more red. So we get some red shadows, we get some blue shadows, we also get some of this bright yellow light. Stuff like that. And, like, oh, look, the grass doesn't need to be super bright green. It can be very muted. Like, that looks nice. But yeah, that stuff. Anyway, but Sir Dracker, what were you working on? Hope you're doing well. Maybe some brighter colors up here. I don't want to color pick. Color picking is another thing I'm trying not to do. And up here we get brighter and brighter. But then we also have some of these bright lights back here. Almost like radiating out. I mean, I don't think it's objectively radiating out, but I do wonder if I can't put some of these back here like this. Sort of showing where there's, like, tree gaps. But I'm going to put them right up against all these little dark spots to sort of outline the tree. I was working on a World of Warcraft fan art. Ooh, do you want to share? I want to see it. Share us your art. I don't have such a cool art wall like you do, and I'm kind of jealous. I'm pretty sure it would break my computer. I don't know how you do it. I know you use PureRef, right? You have like a PureRef file with it all in there. I know Chlor does too. I don't know if you know who Chlor is, but she's great, and she has not Chlor, DZ Kawa. Sorry, I mean, Chlor's great too, but DZ Kawa, I don't know why I got them confused. That's dumb. They're totally different people. Anyway, DZ Kawa has a giant PureRef file. I think kind of like you, where it's just, it has art. It's massive, and it has all of the art by each artist is like clumped into its own little group, and yeah, it's kind of like yours. It's very inspiring to see. You overlay your PureRef. Yeah, DZ does it too. Yeah, she's the one who I saw do it first, but I don't know if she did it before you. You guys could fight that out. Who's the original collector of art? Uh, but yeah, no, I'm jealous of you guys who can do that, because that would break my computer. You have a lot of inspiration on that? Yeah, you do. It's very inspiring. Okay, I'm gonna make little shapes. Who's the OG? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm making little shapes here. And then I'm going to try to put a little bit brighter. I'm trying to get the vibe of it, right? I'm not trying to paint the exact thing. I'm just trying to make it like, so in here there's shapes. So this is pretty light, for example. But then there's these little dark spots. That kind of look like their own leaf shape, actually. And then these dark spots are leaves themselves, right? So they have like that. Something like that. And then these could go and kind of erasing some of the edges here. Ah, thank you so much, Smugsy, for the sub. Thank you very much. That's extremely generous of you. Thank you very much. You are amazing, Smugsy. Thank you for the 11 months. Ooh, okay, check this out. Look at this. Holy crap. This looks like a Drow Ranger, if I've ever seen one. A Night Elf. Or Drow? I don't actually know. Are you WoW pilled? No, you're breathtaking. No, you're breathtaking. It's great. Sir Dracula, this is amazing. I'm blown away. I'm flabbergasted. No, not flabbergasted. I'm flabbered. I'm flabbered. Flabbergasted. I'm blown away. This is amazing. She's undead? Okay, undead. I don't know the WoW race. You're breathtaking. Yeah. No, this is gorgeous. Also, look at the... I love the brushwork. All the brushy lines. Look at that. Look at the brushy lines. So good. Undead elf. She's the undead queen. I see. I don't know my WoW lore, but she looks great. Love the purples. Can't go wrong with purples. Purples and blues. Also, you're getting those, like, the worms in there and then the cool lighting. He's cracked. He's insane. Sir Dracker is cracked and insane. Dracker, are you familiar with Ereg? Dracker. So yes is the answer. He does know Ereg. So these are the branches in front. There are a lot of them. And I want to make sure they're in shapes, right? So even though in this image, if you look at this, it's hard to make out like a shape in here. But if you kind of sort of squint, and this is something that this is not like, you don't have to do this if you were doing the study, but because I'm trying to take this complex scene and simplify it, I kind of feel like if I were to paint this, I would want to give like their shapes on these branches. So like there's kind of a shape here, if you kind of squint, of like everything that's overlapping the tree. So not the background shapes. If you kind of try to look through the tree and just see the stuff that's in front of the so like here's the trunk, but just looking at the stuff that's in front of the trunk, there's kind of some shapes here, right? Or if you look at these clusters in front of this trunk, there's sort of some shapes. That's kind of what I'm trying to do, is like, where are the shapes that are in front of the trunk? You know, do I want one here? And like, how can I design this in a way, you know, are most of the shapes down low, which it kind of looks like they tend to be. So maybe they're the smaller ones. So maybe we draw some additional shapes here. And basically, I'm just trying to make it so that once I start putting all these little splotchy lines, it'll... But yeah, I don't want these branches to be completely unobstructed, right? I want there to be little little obstructions, but also little bits of like light poking through in the background. I don't know how good this is gonna look, but I do think for a study this is working because I'm already learning some things about making this feel. He left for a bit. But yeah, I'm trying. I will probably put in even more brighter. Get some additional branches back here. Something like that. Lighting back here. I think we can kind of go like this ambient light. Not ambient light, but this like this light means almost like unusually green. Because I'm not trying to necessarily get accurate colors because I don't even know how accurate the real photo is or this photo is. I'm trying to get it more. This could be a little darker and greener. Sticks and twigs. You can kind of tell that these clusters are sort of groups, you know? Your original. Be fun to rate a new person today once we're done in a couple hours. Although I don't plan on ending right now. Although it might be a little bit of a shorter stream. I can only take so much of this, like, trying to paint from a photo thing before I go crazy and need just a break. Okay, this doesn't quite... It's not giving me the vibe I quite want. So I'm just going to make a new layer and just start painting on top and seeing if I can't... I mean, it's kind of right. Also, maybe there could be another tree over here. Of course, these branches can all go in front. Sadly, the stream's on like West Asia time, so like 4 a.m. usually. Gotcha. That's unfortunate. That's okay. Different people stream at different times. You know, that's also something that I like. I don't know who all the streamers are, obviously, at different times. At any time, and there's like always somebody, you know? There's a little bit of browns down here as well, so the greens get cooler. I don't know if it's by virtue of the browns being introduced or not. It could just be an illusion, or it's actually cooler greens. I don't actually know. I think these greens are objectively brighter, though. Gray-green thingies going on in here. You get a lot more of this. It's more that I'm just trying to get the illusion of lots of little things in here. Dark spots that are very gray. They kind of... So I'm just going to start by making it a little bit striped. I'm actually kind of changing the perspective a little bit. Something like that's not bad. Giving this a little bit of an outline, just so that we can see it a little bit more to make it stand out. And then maybe down here we can go a little darker. I don't know if it actually gets this dark in the image, but I think it's nice to show that there are some dark plants sticking out. Also, some of these plants going this way could be nice. Just compositionally, this is more of a, you know, not relating to the thing. One thing I'd like to get, and this is one that look better than the photo, and I'm not, I think I am yet. And I think this is not by painting what's in the photo. I think if you just paint what's in the photo, then it will never look better than the. Make it look better than the photo, you need to understand what it is about the photo you like and sort of lean into those things, and then everything else can be simplified and yeah. Try to learn something, but also like an exercise on simplifying and exaggerating things. Anyway, I really like that. But yeah, we got some little textures in here. Here. Like a mosaic of light and shadow. I'm trying to focus it right around the tree though, so that when you make it black and white, you can still see that there's a tree, right? That foreground tree is definitely darker. I should do more studies like this. This is more of like an exercise though. This feels less like a study because I don't think I'm actually doing anything new here. But there's no lime green down below, right? None of the lime green up there is down here. And so you do have like the sun is shining from above. You're just so vibrant. And I think that's neat. Also, you get some light. Something that I didn't do is like some of these lights. You get literally some light on these branches. And again, I'm not painting the exact branches in the image. But wait, yeah, you see a lot of this stuff. A lot of little bits of light back here. There. Now, loving your art. Aw, thanks. KK Mousy says, actually, I've been wanting to do landscape studies, landscape soon. It's cool that I ran to your Twitch around the time I'm gonna start. Nice. Yeah, I think environment studies are tough, kind of, for like a lot of people, because they really are such a big part of it is simplifying, and you can't just paint what you see. Like if you think about it very structurally, like okay, you got a foreground, midground, background, you've got some shapes, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do, although I'm probably not succeeding. I don't know. I actually don't do that many studies like this. I almost never do studies on stream. So this is a little bit different for me. I do want to bring in some of these brighter, more vibrant things. There's actually some like almost yellow, very yellow colors up here. Like super yellow. I don't know if you guys can see that, but like this might hurt your eyes. But like this right here, look how yellow that is. I don't even know what that is. I don't know if that's an artifact of the sun bouncing through, like subsurface scattering, or if these leaves are actually more yellow. I think it's just something weird happening with the light. But I'm gonna try to put some of that in. And let's see, where does it seem to be happening? It seems to be happening along the edges of the dark leaves. Okay. So you have like a cluster of dark leaves here, and it's in the background. So like here. But yeah. And even if this doesn't quite look right, I think by putting it sort of on the edges of these darker leaves, Well, I don't just want on the edge of the dark leaves. Maybe like a path in here. Maybe something like that. I'm really trying to get these to look vibrant. Okay. So now, that aspect of the study I think is done. Now what about... I think that's good, actually. What about some of this stuff to be more in the background? Do we have any... Can we see some of the background lights? Not really. Probably don't need to put them in there. I mostly draw anime art, but lately, past 2 years, trying to differ it when I get more into painterly style than what I'm used to. I think it's good to just practice different stuff anyway. So, like, I mean, if you draw a lot of anime, you're probably pretty good at stylizing and, like, pushing shapes. So, like, even if you were to draw from a human reference, right, you could probably take it and sort of push it in ways that make it look more anime. And kind of that's what I'm doing even in this, right? Because like I'm not trying to make everything look perfectly real. Or like, you know, I did a rock study, a very quick little rock practice here because I like the colors. And like I didn't take any of these rocks. I kind of made my own rocks, right? I made very chunky square rocks, basically just made a cube, literally started with a square cube. And then I went from there, and I feel like that's kind of the same process. I actually think there's a lot of similarity between taking like a human in life and turning it and stylizing it, and taking an environment and sort of stylizing that, because every environment is stylized, almost every. Like it's so hard not to stylize an environment because there's just so much information, right? It's way too complicated. There's too much random stuff. Nobody's going to draw every leaf. And so what you typically get is like when you do draw a tree, you simplify it. You say, here's my, you know, here's my tree shape, right? It's going to look like this. This is the big trunk. You know, it's going to go like this. And then you're going to say, okay, well, and I'm going to put some leaves on it. You know, here's a big chunk of leaf. Here's some leaves. Here's some leaves. And like, okay, here's my tree, right? Like, does that look like a tree? Well, kinda, sorta, maybe. You know, maybe put some light on it, and like, okay, there's my tree. But that doesn't really look like, you know, like that doesn't. But like that's very stylized, right? Most trees have, you know, hundreds of branches. They have tons of stuff, and there's little twigs and things sticking all over, and like that doesn't look as good though because it gets too messy and too noisy. I mean, maybe a little bit in there could look nice, right? But if you go too messy, it's just going to be too noisy. You know, no one's going to draw every leaf. And so you can end up pick and choose, like how stylized do you want it, you know? And if you're going to draw another tree behind it, you know, maybe you intentionally draw this tree lighter so that you can see it, you know? Because if you also draw it dark, well, that's too much noise. And so a lot of environment painting is just like trying to learn how to simplify things. Right, and layering things into light, you know, maybe a light background. You know, a lot of shape design. That kind of thing. Maybe some foreground here. But anyway, they're just painting the whole thing. Also, I realize you can't see that very well. Yeah. My advice though is if you do environments, really just start with like a foreground, midground, background. If you can just get some simple, you know, simple shapes, you know, here's a, you know, just 3 different values, 3 or 4 values. You know, you have a light, medium, dark kind of thing going on. Um, you know, if you have something like that, that in my opinion is the best way to start environments. Just start with those simple overlapping shapes, and then whatever you want to do within those shape groups or those families. You know, if you want to put a big tree in the foreground, just start. Like it's such a because most environments can be broken up into that way, right? If you want to paint like grasses, focus on those things. You know, um, if you want to add another layer, you can make it even lighter in the background. But generally, you get that sort of light to dark layering effect. That's pretty common, right? Even in this painting, we have that, right? We have darker in the foreground with like the trunks, and then lighter in the background. Now, there's a lot of stuff in between, but there's still that underlying structure there. Anyway, that's probably the easiest way to simplify stuff. So yeah, that is my, I don't know if advice, but yeah, that's my advice. That's actually always my advice for environments. Just start simple. Real photos can be messy and confusing, and values can be all over the place, and so it's hard to, like, you know, if you were to do a study of this, it's very hard because how do you split this up into foreground, midground, background? But like there are ways you can do it. So that's something that I think is important to point out, that like you don't have to try to paint what's in front of you. You can try to simplify and stylize to make it more like, so you can build it up. And I actually think that's sort of the, like, as you build up, right? This might be overly simple, right? Like, so if I was going to paint this thing back here, maybe I literally start like this. Like, you got your sky, you got your big shapes in the background, right? So if I'm doing a study of this painting that's in front of us, or on the side, if I was going to paint the whole thing, which I'm not, but if I were, right? What we might see is something like this. So I'm going to just paint some shapes here. So this could be our scene. So our scene has these rocks in the foreground, right? But like this doesn't look at all like the thing. But here's the thing, when I'm actually painting, like painting my own stuff, which is 99% of what I do, this is how I would start, right? I would start like this. And then I might say, okay, well, you know, let's get some of those rock shapes in here, and I'll add some additional ones in here. And then, oh, these rocks need their lighting, so I would start to add some light on there. You know, let's get some rocks in here. Obviously, I'm kind of fudging it now because I don't want to paint every rock, so I'm sort of skipping steps. But like, let's get some bright light in there. You know, there's some light down here. Oh, I don't know if you can see this. Right? So something like this, where it's like, okay, now let's get the light down here, right? Because we have this light source thing down here. And like, okay, it's not great yet, but what if then we said, okay, well now we need some ambient light in that foreground. So we're gonna start putting some light in here, in these shadows. Well, hold on, now we're cooking, right? Like now we can start to see how maybe these shapes start making sense, right? So it went from just this extreme, you know, light and dark thing, and then we say, okay, well actually, this midground layer is actually darker because these rocks are so bright. So we can add more brightness in here, but as a compensation, we actually need to add darkness in here. This is going to be the green. And while we're at it, let's just make it a little green. Right? So now we put some of that green in there. Right, we still get brighter, you know, it's still yellow green, but we can make it a little, you know, yellowy green back there. But like these little bright rocks now we can start sprinkling. Like it's kind of all, it's still built up in the same way, right? So even if it starts very simple, it's just like dark black in the foreground and then gets lighter, sometimes you can still start that way to slowly and incrementally build up. And obviously, you know, I've skipped a lot of steps, but you know, and then you would start putting in colors and doing all the stuff that you'd want to do. I don't know. That's how I would do it. Because otherwise, it gets too chaotic. It's too messy. Yeah, it gets really chaotic. But anyway, this was the actual study of that rock thing that I did. But the idea is still there. I'm trying to think of like other things. I guess other things to study are like the more fundamental, so like perspective, um, which is tough because I think that you really do need like your crash course. You know, you need your 10-minute video on how perspective works, so that you actually know what to pay attention to. And then when you're trying to paint something, you're like maybe painting something from a different perspective. Ooh, the speckled brush in here that I kind of like. Some graininess in here. You bought Mark Burnett's art study school, so I've been practicing fundamentals a lot more this year. Nice. How is it? How is that class? I don't know. Do I know anyone who's taken it or bought it? Definitely some of it has helped with your art too. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I've never taken any courses like that. But it seems like it would be cool. He seems like he cares a lot, and it seems like he'd have good info. I mean, I think he's. I'm not always a huge fan of his videos. The tone of them is a little bit strange for me, but the knowledge is good. So I do enjoy. I watch his videos like every week when they come out, because I do enjoy the way he teaches, or I enjoy the stuff he has to teach about, or not that he has to, but you know what I mean. I enjoy this. I think he's a good teacher, even if sometimes the tone is a little goofy. Sometimes I like, I don't know, I think my favorite teacher is like Marco Bucci. I think he does things in both a fun and entertaining, or an entertaining and educational way. But yeah, I have no issues with Mark Burnett. I think he does a good job, seems like. What else for this? I mean, I think some of these could probably be just a little bit more carefully designed. Some of these leaves probably, but I don't want them to look too like scattered. I do think having some simplified shapes is good. Anyway, I think this one's good. I think this is a good spot to call that one quits. Maybe we'll do one more little study. Actually, we could probably polish this one up a bit. Although this is less about studying now and more about making it presentable for like Instagram, which is stupid. I know that's not a good reason to do studies. You should not. That's another issue I could rant about. I don't think people should post their studies online that often, or at least not after they do them, like not right after. Make mistakes, try things, make it silly, make it terrible. Who cares? You're trying to learn, right? And yet we all want it to like look good, so we do this like layer of polish, like I'm doing. Oops. Like trying to do like a layer of polish to make it look nice. And that's just kind of goofy, you know? You shouldn't need a layer of polish. With my normal art, for anyone who maybe is just tuning in or something and never been here, I can show you what I normally do. So normally I have a whole bunch of paintings, and I do like a bunch of thumbnails each stream, sometimes only a couple, and then we pick one of them and then we work on it till the end of the stream. And so I basically do these little sketches from imagination. We pick one, and you know, sometimes they're just playing around with color. Sometimes it's not. Here, let's. I have some other ones. I mean, I have tons of them, right? Sometimes they're a little more directed. So like, these were all pretty random, but somebody recommended like, oh, do a sunset. So we ended up painting a sunset, and then from here we, you know, kept painting and turned it into this. So you know, stuff like that. It's a lot of like one-day stream painting type things, but we do a lot of these thumbnails, a lot of explorations and sketches. You know, sometimes it's moods, not studies, right? Because I'm not typically using references at this point. I might gather references after. So like after I decide that I'm going to paint this, I might go and grab some references for like a castle. But up until this point, it was just sort of me playing around with colors and shapes and stuff. So yeah, this is typically what I do. I don't normally do studies on stream, but today, that's why I have this grid back here of like with the numbers, because I'm just reusing the grid from my normal streams. Okay, we can get rid of that one. We can get rid of this one because that, well, I mean, that's a good demo, I guess. What else? Surely we can do one more. Let's go to Map Crunch again. Just excuse me. Basically just me going to places until I say, ooh, that's cool. And just like I normally would when I want to paint, right? I just want to paint what I want to paint. And then find something that's cool. And then try to understand what you like about it and then paint that. So a lot of times it's like, you know, I like this, you know, this is neat. I like how dark it gets under here. We could do that. Right? These sort of overwhelming, massive trees. Although we already painted some trees today, but this is a different vibe, right? These have a lot more blues in them, right? It's much cooler. I like that vibe. We could do that. Pretty standard street scene, not very interesting to me. Ooh, I like the curvy road. I think that's always that's a hard one to paint in perspective, I find. Oh, interesting. I don't know what so here's this is a neat design one. So if I've never seen this before, but I like it, putting tires up on I don't know why they're there. Maybe someone knows. Does anyone know? Is it like rainwater? No, you wouldn't drink out of it. Maybe it is. Maybe there's like, maybe not for drinking, but maybe they're like, they capture water in some way. For like plants or something. I don't know. Because you see some plants there. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why there's tires up here. If anyone knows, let me know. But what I think is cool about this, if you were designing your own little, like, you know, rundown places, wherever this is, you know, this is like a little design feature that you could throw into your painting that it just adds some character. Like, this has so much character because of like the little weird, you know, from the bars on the windows to the tires on the roof. Like, that is just so interesting. Also, I don't know where this is. Maybe Thailand? Yunlin County. Let's Google that. I don't know where that is. Hold on. I'm going to do this. I'm going to Google it off. Taiwan. Okay. Taiwan. I said Thailand, right? No, it wasn't Taiwan. It was Taiwan. So, yeah. But anyway, next one. Maybe there's something we can... And also, this would be so much cooler if I could do this in real life. Like, just go outside in digital paint. Because, especially for things like colors. Ooh, speaking of colors. I like these colors. That's fun. Actually, all of this stuff is neat. Right, this is another... This would be another nice one if you're doing environment stuff. Oh, fruit stand? Look at that. It's a little fruit stand. It's kind of cute. See, this could be a fun design thing, is take these shapes and sort of redesign this fruit stand. But, like, look how simply it's constructed. You have, like, the little sticks here. Oh, crap, you can't see that. I don't know how long I was talking with you guys not being able to see. But look at this. It's like a little fruit stand. Or a vegetable stand. They've got their little makeshift, you know, it's just little sticks here. Stood up. I don't know if it's propped up or if it's nailed down. Looks a little like it could fall over. You've got little things going across to make like little stepping stair things to do a nice little presentation, which is kind of cute. I feel like that's a very... Everybody has their doors open like it's a shop. I assume they have like a... People wander around and it's kind of like they're up for sale, and then it's like a local community market thing. But anyway, I like some of the design choices, right? Like I like this paint, you know, the blue and pink paint with the triangular thatched, whatever you call it. I don't know if these are roofs that open up or something, but they brickwork here. Like these bricks are at a certain angle and these are a different one. There's something... It's just like if I were to design a building or a fruit stand or whatever, like, you know, the paneling on here, you know, I like it. I like that stuff because it gives you things to think about and observe. Here's another place by the ocean or a lake. I assume it's by an ocean. What is this? That feels out of place. So I'm just browsing Google Earth. We're finding... icebergs. Ooh, that's cool. Look at that. That's a neat... I mean, I would just like to paint this. This just looks cool. Yeah, this spot's gorgeous. Although it's terrifying to think about going through the water when there's like floating ice and stuff. I gotta head out. See y'all later. See ya, Frostern. Alright, so I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to paint this. And I think what I like about this is the overlapping shapes, the scale of like the foreground stuff. There's also some fun light because it's kind of overcast, but there's still a strong light. Have I done an icy? Yeah, I painted ice and water. Yeah, but this would be a fun, like... Whoa, what did I just do? I just hit F12. Didn't mean to do that. I meant to hit print screen. Let's... I will put this in chat for you guys if you want the link here. There's the link. Okay. But yeah, this one would be this will be a nice, fairly simple, straightforward painting, I think. You know what we can do? We can do this. And I'm not going to try to get the exact scale and everything right, but what I am going to try to do is get the values right, the composition mostly right, because I picked the composition right. But I think these foreground, I like the foreground. So here's what I'm thinking. I don't know if you guys, actually, it might be easier for me to copy paste. Let's do this. What I like is some of the potential here with the, so when I look at this image, right, I look at this, I see a foreground shape. I like this one pointing in this direction, and I like this. But this is like, that's the composition, right? So what I would do is move this one over here, right? This is pointing in there, and then we have this. So now we're going like that, right? So that's kind of going to be my goal, is I'm going to move some of this to make the composition more appealing, or at least in my opinion. And maybe I'll introduce some additional shapes in here for some overlap if I need. But I do want to capture the same vibe. I really like the bright light, so I want to keep that white here with the texture and the shadows in here. I think that looks nice. I think this backlighting, these shadows to me are really appealing. They add some nice contrast, potentially some fun stuff you can do with the shapes here. So that's, I think, what I'm going to focus on. So, let's get painting. I think what I'm going to start out with, also it's weird to paint when it's down there. There. I think what I'm going to do is just try to sketch out where I want these shapes to go. So I think probably, you know, eye line up here, just like it is. You know, we have these big shapes. I think this one can definitely still, you know, come this way. Maybe we put these other ones in. I don't know. Actually, maybe this is smaller. But I don't want it smaller, right? I want it to be able to emphasize that. These could be smaller. So again, these don't have to be the exact same, but there's no reason not to make them pretty much the same. I'm not sure if I like these back here. I might have to simplify those. But this one definitely can be bigger. And then so now the foreground is the tricky part, right? So like, do I want this to go there maybe? And then this one can go here. So we have this big foreground shape. Maybe a shape back here. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how I want to do this. Something like that, I think. And then these can kind of go off the page, maybe. I'm thinking that's a nice little composition. And then maybe over here, we can have another shape, you know, a little bit behind here to kind of break up that. So we can still have those overlaps. But I'm trying to, you know, and then do we want this one in here too? Might as well. This one can go off the page, maybe. See, this is weird for me because... Yeah, so now I can move things around. I can say, okay, well, what if I put this over here? Still having enough room for these things back here. I think that works. So something like that, maybe. And I don't need to do this all in black and white, obviously. I think for a study that works. Okay, now, do I like that composition? I mean, there's some foreground stuff here that I kind of like. I don't know how well it's going to read. Kind of a combination of this stuff sort of popping up here. Okay, let's... What about... That's pretty good, I think. And this is sort of my pre-sketch. I don't know if I'm actually going to use this or start over. But I think this is a good way to plan, right? I am changing some things. I'm making this more of the focal point. Which means I'm, you know, downplaying some of this stuff over here, right? Because normally this is a big mountain over there. So I'm sort of downplaying that. I do like these foreground things, though. The emphasis on, like, these little chunks of white in here, where the snow is. And these strands with the bright stuff. So anyway, I think that's a good composition. I'm not totally sold on this shape here, though. Okay, let's go with it. Okay, so first things first, let's pick a color or a couple colors. I don't know if this is a great way to do it, but I'm going to do an overlay. I'm going to pick a blue. Nice icy blue. Subscribed. Oh, thank you so much for the sub. Hey, Mousy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hope you're doing well today. Not hope you're doing well, but I mean, I do hope you're doing well. But yeah, thank you very much. That's very generous of you. All right, so now we've got a little bit of tone to blue. So now I'm gonna do some. I'm just gonna put the light in. I'm literally gonna just make a selection on my own shapes, very haphazardly. Is that the right word? Haphazardly? Just uncontrolled. I'm gonna make some of these horizontal lines. But yeah, no, I really appreciate the sub. That's very generous of you. Thank you very much. Very, very grateful. Okay, I think this will work for that. I'm kind of, you know, going around this just to... Okay, now... I don't know if this is going to work, but literally just slap in like a, maybe a color dodge. What if a color dodge? Let's do that. Let's go a little bit yellow. And I'm using a texture brush. I don't normally do color dodge. Whoops. What am I doing? Ah, okay. I don't normally use color dodge with a texture brush, but I think it might give me some of these like water look, this watery look. I think that'll work. And obviously I'm, it's not going to work for like the clouds. Or to come in here and paint things and move things around. But I like this, keeping these very dark at the start. Obviously we haven't done any of the snow. Something like that. These obviously are way, way, way brighter. But I couldn't really make them much brighter until I made the water brighter. Otherwise they wouldn't have shown. There would have been no contrast. But now they have all of that. Some blue. I don't really know what color of blue to put this, but it doesn't really matter. I guess it's more about the relationship between it. And in fact, if it looks more blue to me, I can make it more blue in here just to give it that feel. And then here is actually quite bright. I mean, it's all in shadow, so it is very bright. Actually, there's kind of a purple tint to it, isn't there? I feel like there's a bit of a purple. Maybe it's just my eyes playing tricks on me. It feels a bit purple, so I'm going to make it purple. Funny enough, this is actually a darker shade, or darker color. It's also more shapy because it's further away. Something like that. Okay, I don't know if that's, I mean, this is kind of messy. Kind of messy. But that's kind of what I get for painting over stuff like this and sort of doing it in this weird, broken way. Process isn't amazing here. But I do like it. I like that some of this stuff, if it feels a certain color, I'm going to make it that color. I'm not going to, this feels a little bit purpley. I'm not really worried about the actual colors here. Also, I haven't done any of the little lines here. Like the snow bits. And the snow bits are following the mountain, right? They're following the what do you call it? The contours of the mountain. Right? So we have this mountain stuff. Yeah, so these contours are following the curves. So it's kind of like this, right? It's sort of, that's what I mean by it's following the curves. Like, if I were just to draw a circle around this mountain, it would go like that. And I kind of like that. I like that the little patterns, you know, you can design these any way you want probably as long as they're following these curves. So you could put in shapes here. You can make them up a little bit. And maybe put some light back here. A lot of these bands, one of the secrets to environment painting is when you want depth, instead of adding lines that like converging, like you always think of when you learn perspective, is actually to put bands that get spaced closer together. So you just put horizontal lines of space closer together. Whether it's fields or ice like this, or just things that, you know, because as there's repetition, you're gonna find that those spaces are get closer. So it's, yeah. That's my trick. And sometimes you can put converging things to, you know, you can make converging shapes, but a lot of times you don't. Just trying to make some shapes here. So now, trying to think. Okay, this has got to move. I don't know if the overlay is going to look funny. You can't really see where this is anymore, I guess, but maybe it can sit down here very tiny. I don't think you guys need it anymore. I just want it out of my way. So now we've got some atmospheric perspective back here that we need. Some of this is a little bluer, a little like a blue gray. It still is the most vibrant, of course. I do not like this shape. Still. And I think what I don't like about it is it's too big. Very large, in our face. It's just not appealing either. It's not a very well drawn shape. But this is a nice little study, I think, for some compositional re-changing assignment. We're sort of playing around with composition a little bit. Also, there's these other icebergs back here, which I didn't really know they're icebergs, but so we don't need to make it clear that they are icebergs. I just assumed they were land, like the rocks, but they are in fact icebergs. That's another thing that images and video, you know, pictures are really bad at. Like, if I'm just looking at this and I'm zoomed out, I don't even know if this stuff back here is ice or land because it's too hard to see. But if I zoom in and I know it's ice, then I'm tempted to paint it like the same color as the ice. But like the fact I couldn't tell if it was land or ice means I probably should have painted it the same color as the land, right? And like if you, yes, I could zoom in and do detail back here, but I couldn't see the detail before. So why would I paint it? Why would I paint that detail? And that's something that is tricky. Hard to kind of get that out of your head when doing environments. Like, yes, you can zoom in and see everything, but the fact is you don't. You don't see everything. Most of the stuff you just kind of fades to the background. It blurs. But no, I'm really happy I'm doing these little mini study walkthrough talk thingies today. I don't know what you want to call it. It's kind of a study, but also kind of also I like these shapes up here. But yeah, there's some stuff that I'm learning, but also I'm talking through things. Somewhat educational, I guess, maybe. There's kind of these like radiating lines up this little mountain shape, which is kind of neat. Are there some over here too? All along the, oops, all along the base here. I don't know if I actually want all of this brightness down here. That could be a little bit much. But this gives me a nice opportunity to try a shape design. That's something that I'm always trying to work on, is sort of like, if I'm going to make these organic shapes, instead of just making them in any shape, you know, just oh, they happen to look exactly like this. Well, that's not, like, if I were to pan the camera a little bit, right, you're going to see more shapes, but they're going to look different. In fact, we could do it, right? We could literally move the camera, and now the shapes are going to look a little different, right? Because we're looking at a different scene. But there's still a tons of shapes, and like, I want to know how to make shapes like that look like this, right? All this little speckled snow, but on my own, right? I don't just want to copy the photo. I want to simplify it. You know, maybe there's some big solid shapes like on top, and then there's little, as it gets down into the valleys, there's more speckledness, right? And so that's maybe why here, right, we see all the speckled stuff, because we're kind of on the sides of the mountains. I don't know. And then up here we can start to see a solid shape. Alrighty. I don't think I want to put the ripples in the water. Not important to me. In fact, just the gradient that the ripples make, like, I don't, just another thing, I don't know, you know, when I talk about doing studies, I always talk about, like, you have to learn stuff first, and then then that's what you focus on and trying to apply. I don't know, one of the things about, like, values, and I don't know, I think this is relevant to this image here, but, like, there's more than one way to make a value, right? So, like, this is a value. Here, let's do a light value, right? This is a light value relative to the background. But you could argue that this is going to be the same value. So obviously this is not the same value. But what if I made a patchwork, right, of this? Like, you know, this is obviously a very chunky texture, but the average value might be similar, right? So, like, if this were just kind of a blurry, chunky mess, like a, you know, patchwork of value, you could kind of treat this as the same value, right? Even though there's some darker spots and there's some lighter spots, the overall value kind of sort of reads as like the same value, right? In the context of a painting. And this happens a lot where, like, you know, the water might not, technically it's not a different value. It's just you have a bunch of little shadows spread in with the water, but it gives the illusion that it's darker. And so you don't have to paint all the texture. Sometimes you can just say, oh, it's darker in these areas, so I'm going to make it darker, right? So, like, if I look at this image, right? If I look at this image, there's the bright spot right here in the middle where there's no texture and it's pure bright. But then there's a lot of texture over here. But I don't have to paint all that, right? I could just simplify that to a darker value. And that illusion will still come through because you don't see all that texture immediately, right? So I could say, you know, here's the focal point or whatever, and all of this can be a little darker. All of this can be a little darker, right? Rather than trying to have to paint all the texture, right? This can get a little brighter. Right, so that's one way you can do it instead of having to paint all the texture. Like I've seen a lot of people go crazy with the water, with painting water, trying to paint every ripple, and like, come on, that's, I mean, you could if you wanted. I don't know who would want to. It's a lot of work. Also, the sky is a little grayer. That way, we can make the sun seem a little brighter. If we make the sky a little duller. Okay, this stuff, though, I do not like. So, what I don't like is this. Too soft, too chunky. Or not too chunky, too soft. I want it to be more shapely. That's actually, this is something that I've tried to do before, and I've failed. I don't know if I've ever made nice ice shapes. Making ice shapes are hard. Because ice is not, like, it's not, I mean, it's organic, but it's not organic like a tree is organic, right? Or like a rock, where rock has erosion. I mean, ice has erosion too, but oftentimes its erosion is so, like, you know, you get a tiny little hole and the hole will spread. So it's like, it's not just, oh, it's warm on this side, so it wears away at an even rate. No, it's all bumpy and lumpy and weird. Like, it's very hard for me to design ice because I don't have a logic to it, right? It feels chaotic, and at least with like trees and rocks, you're like, okay, there's a logic to it. It makes sense. So yeah. I don't know. It's tough. And then it ends up looking like a fluffy snowball, kind of, and it just doesn't look right. Like, even this, right? The edge here, in real life, it's very, very jagged and bumpy. Well, it's not that bumpy, but, you know, it's like a wavy, ugly form, right? Like, down here, it has all these weird bumps. I don't want to paint all that. That's not going to make an appealing shape. So it's kind of like, I need to figure out the gesture of the thing, which is a thing you can do in environments also. Environments have gesture, spoilers. Or spoiler, they do. There, that's kind of a nice shape, I guess. This is also pretty bright. I don't know if I like that, though. Also, it's very purpley blue, which is okay, but this stuff isn't, and that's probably not okay. I guess this is rock, though. It's not even supposed to be ice. Maybe this ice should be bluer. Maybe something like that. But yeah, I'm trying to think. What else? What have you guys been studying? Has anyone been Is anyone lurking, or if anyone's lurking and would like to let me know, what are you guys working on? Obviously, you don't have to come out of lurk, but you know what I mean. I'm always just curious what people are working on, and if you'd like to share, please do. Whether you're on YouTube or on Twitch. I do stream on YouTube, by the way, mostly as a way to save my VODs. Although someday, if I ever get enough subscribers, I'll have to do something about like not using copyrighted music, because right now, even if I could earn money, I can't because everything is copyrighted, which is fine. I'm not doing it for money, but that is a it is a weird side effect of using copyrighted music on your streams. Is that when they're on YouTube, but YouTube knows that and they're like, nope, we will never give you money. You've been mainly drawing requests lately of people's OCs on Twitter. Oh, that sounds like a fun way to do it. That sounds like a fun thing to do. It's like a nice challenge. I feel like if you did a lot of that, you'd get really good um, at sort of adapting what you're drawing in different compositions and stuff like that. Rather than just like sticking completely to your comfort zone, you have to do a certain amount of adaptation, which is neat. Because I find that's one of the hardest things to do is that sort of adapting when you're painting. Okay, I think here. Sorry, I will take a look in just a moment. I just had a revelation in this, or realization. I don't know. I just hit on something that I want to lean into, which is these ice shapes have form, which I know is obvious, but sometimes it's easy to forget, which means I should have painted more of that form. So now I'm sort of making up a form a little bit. Anyway. Something like that's kind of neat. And yeah, maybe there's some shape here. There, something like that's neat. Kind of fits the ice vibe going on too. Yeah. Oh, yours is? Okay, let's take a look. Oh yeah, this one's kind of icy. Yeah, like an Ice Queen type character. I like it. You know what I really love? I really love the star look in like the that belly area. I don't know what you call it. That's one of my favorite like motifs. Is like you take a dark color, like a dark blue or a dark purple, and instead of having just a solid dark color, maybe it's for a shadow. It could be a shadow shape, it could be a clothing shape, but you just put like sparkles in it. Not just a pattern, but like illuminated sparkles, almost like you're staring into a galaxy, kind of. And it's just in a shadow. It's like I don't know, just it's a really cool way. You could be some mundane thing like painting of like a cupboard or something, and there's just in the depth of the cupboard where it's dark, you just put like little sparkles. And I noticed you're kind of doing that. That shirt or the design kind of has that. Oops, this is not yours. But yeah, no, it's really cool. I like it. Very nice. You just do your favorite characters because they're fun to draw? Yeah. But they're also other people's characters, right? Which makes it beautiful. Yeah, I think so. Hi, Rihanna again. Um, hmm. Trying to just come in there, do that. Add some shapes. Something like that. I'm just trying to sort of nitpick these shapes. It's not a big deal, but you know, while I'm on the topic of shapes, because this image is all shapes, right? It's very little rendering. I had to step out for a moment. Yeah, no worries. Welcome back. Rihanna, have you done any art lately? Any at all? Totally understandable if you haven't. No? Okay. Hmm. So this, okay, I don't like that I'm doing this, but I want to make this one look nicer because the colors, this was my first little study here. I don't like how I did the graphical shapes in the background. Or maybe I do. Maybe I don't. What is it that I don't like about it? There's something I don't like about it, and I'm trying to put my finger on it, and I can't. I'm planning a dragon on your own wall. Oh, that's cool. Nice. That's awesome. That sounds like an awesome project, actually. Yeah, dragon. Like a mural, but it's not in that stage. Yeah, no, that's understandable. That's a. I feel like it. Did I feel like any for me, if I were ever to do like a mural, it would be in the planning stage for so long with like, you know, taking. I'm trying to think, how would I do this? I'm just trying to spitball ideas here. I think I would take a photo of my room from multiple angles, or like the room it's gonna be in, on the wall, and then I would do a drawing. Oh no, not a mural. Oh god, not a mural. Okay, not a mural. Okay, but I'm just trying to think through. If I were to do a mural, though, I would take a photo of the wall, then I would do a drawing, and then I would overlay it on the wall to kind of give myself an idea of what it's going to look like compositionally. Um, and then that's basically it. I think I would just paint right on top of the wall, not on top of the wall, right on top in the photo. I would paint on top until it kind of looks right, and then I would try to take that photo and re sort of paint it, like use it as like I'd probably grid it out if it were big. I don't really know how to do murals or big paintings. A big painting, what's the difference between a mural and a big painting? I don't actually know. I feel like a big painting on a wall is a mural, but maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, I feel like that's just semantics. I've done that. Uh, I did it with a beamer. A beamer? What's a beamer? I don't know. I don't know what that is. KK Mousy says your art teacher used to have a cool green dragon mural that he painted back in school. That sounds cool. Oh, projector. Gotcha. A projector. That makes sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Beam him up, Scotty. Well, not really, but that's a teleporter. But yeah, beam me up, Scotty. I mean, not beam him up. Butchering references. Anyway, yeah, yeah. It's a projector. Gotcha. Yeah, that would be cool. But yeah, I'm trying to make this look interesting, I guess. And I don't like that interesting is the only word I'm using because that's not the only thing. Okay, what about... Something like that, maybe. I do think I can put some darker shapes in here. Actually, I'm curious. What happens if I just take that and go like this? Is that better? Maybe. Actually, you know what we could do? I have a better idea. I'm gonna merge visible. And I'm just gonna zoom in. You projected your drawing on the wall, you made it in the computer, and then paint draw over the projected image. Oh, okay, gotcha. That's a cool way of doing it. Yeah, that's neat. I haven't done a lot of, like, real-life art. Pretty much all of it's been on the computer. And I don't mind it. Like, I've done a bit of real-life painting, but it is kind of... I don't know. Sometimes I look around at other artists who are super, like, proactive with their arting, and they do a lot of physical art, and they jump from project to project and different medium to medium, and it does give me, like, I don't know if I like working like that, but it's like, man, I feel like I should do more of that, just because to be a more, like, well-rounded artist. Not that I need to be, but you know. Be some darker shapes in here. Sorry, here we call it Beamer, since in English I assumed it was called... No worries. Yeah, I got what you're saying now. I mean, I kind of assumed that's what you were talking about, but I wasn't 100% sure, so I was just curious. But yeah, Beamer, that makes more sense. You are beaming it onto the wall. You're literally beaming it, so that makes... But yeah, a beamer or a projector. Yeah. Let's paint some more little dark shapes in here. I think that's already looking better. Yeah, that's looking better. Getting some of these dark shapes in here, and then we can take some of these more grays. We can just paint some small rocks. I'm gonna write study stream in here. There. I'm making this like a post for Instagram. Or for, not for Instagram, but for, for, like, Twitter. I know it's stupid, I shouldn't be changing what I'm doing for social media. But, you know what? since I'm basically done. And now I'm just trying to polish it up and like make it presentable. I like these streams because it feels like I'm drawing with someone and I'm being more productive. Aw, that's good. I'm happy that you feel that way. That's how I've always felt um uh about Twitch as well. It's one of the reasons I got into streaming is because sort of that exact thought, you know, a lot of the people who I arted along with were doing art, and then they convinced me to stream at some point. I'm like, you know, if I'm gonna be painting, let's do it with more people, and rather than having to like find a stream, why don't I just have my own stream? But yeah, no, I think always having a good group of people who you can kind of you know, just jump on Twitch while you're painting definitely is nice. It's so nice to feel like you're painting along. I've always had this thought, and let me know if this is insane to you, but I've always had this like a way to like guilt trip myself into being productive with art, which is basically like, you know, I'll have like an artist on my second monitor, and then I might be playing a game, and I'm like, you know what? They are working right now, and I'm not. And like they're getting better and I'm not. And so I'm like, dang it, I want to I need to start painting. And it's so silly. Like it wasn't like a negative way. I didn't feel bad, not really, but like I was always happy. I liked using other people as a way to like guilt trip myself into doing art because I'm like, you know, or like I remember I would see Joe, you're insane. Thanks. Like I would see people, you know, doing like little studies like this, and I'd be like, "You just cranked out like more head studies than I've ever done in my life in one stream." I'm like, I gotta catch up, you know? It's like I feel not bad, but like knowing that there is someone, you know, for example, I just did, you know, 3 little mini landscape studies. You know, one was more of a material study, one was more of a composition, one was more of a color. But you know, I did 3 little mini studies, and like some people probably have never done a single environment study. And so there's this thought of like, it's to me it's motivating, and like, you know, yeah, your study may not look like my study if you've never painted an environment, but you could have been doing a study at the very least, you know. Sometimes just a matter of doing it. I don't know, for me that gave me that always gave me a motivation. I don't know if it ever gave you guys motivations, but yeah, I like the feeling of knowing that I'm painting along with someone, or that they're painting along with me. It's not just me putting in effort and getting nothing out of it. Like we're all in this together. I don't know. I've always liked that. I'm gonna do some shapy stuff here. These trees. Is that a weird shape? That is a weird shape for a tree. I feel the same way. Draw way more often when I have streams. Yeah. Same. I like it. I know some people would probably hear me say that and like that's, you know, think that it's a really toxic behavior to like guilt trip yourself, but I find that it's, I don't know, like I want to draw more. And so if you can make yourself guilt tripped into doing the thing, like you shouldn't feel guilty for not doing something if you don't want to do it, like, you know, but sometimes I feel, I don't know, like I like to use other people of like little mental tricks to get my butt into gear. do it often enough and it'll become second nature and you would want. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's where habits. I mean, streaming for me is kind of like that. You know, I started because I wanted to do it, obviously, and I kept doing it. I still want to do it. But streaming for me became like, I don't want to say a job because jobs can suck and you know, but like streaming is it's like a job I want to go to, right? Like it's not a thing I think about as like, do I go to work today? Well, of course I go to work today, right? It's my job. You go to work. That's just what you know. Like at some point you don't really make that choice every day if you want to go to work, right? You might say I don't want to go to work, but then you probably do it anyway. That's kind of how I am with streaming. Now I do want to stream and I'm glad I do it, but I'm not getting paid, not really, like a little bit, but not much. But like, so it's obviously not the money, but it's like I don't technically show up to work because of the money. Like, I mean, I do, like, I have a job because I need money, but, like, I don't make the choice every day. Like, do I go to work? Well, I guess I do want money, right? No, it's more like I've made an agreement. I have a contract of some sort, and that I'm going to show up to work. And yes, I will get paid if I do, but in some ways, that, like, the burning the bridge, if you will, like the, you know, like getting fired and all that stuff, that's more of like I'm ruining the social contract if I don't show up. And for me with streaming, it's more of that, right? It's more like I've made a commitment to myself and I guess other people that I'm going to do this and I want to do it, and so I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter if I want to in that moment, right? It's more of like I don't want to break that social contract kind of. And that to me is like the thing that makes me return every day, or every day that I stream. You love these studies? Sushi Cat, thank you! Yeah, I'm pretty happy with them. So this one's not really a study, this is more of a demo of like just shapes and stuff. But this is a rock study, kind of. Yeah, it is a rock study. It's more less about rocks and more about colors. And this is ice from a icy painting. Although I do want to kind of add some like warmth in here. There's a feeling of warmth in here that isn't in my painting. But yeah, Sushi Cat, how are you? It's been a while. And you feel me with the social contract thing? Yeah, it's hard to explain a little bit for me, but yeah, for me there's definitely a social contract, even if it's just between myself, so it's not really social. I'm also playing with colors now. I know not all of these are colored things. Uh-oh, we did a thing. You linked the channel, Rihanna, and not the image, but hold on, I'll open app. I think it'll work. Ooh! Oh, the pet! Asmodeus and Jesus! Jesus, what a great name. Ooh, wait, what am I looking at? What is Jesus? Hold on, I see Asmodeus is adorable. That is so cute. Okay, that is... Okay, I'm in the pet share channel. Look at this. You guys, you have to see this. Rihanna, can I share your image on stream? I'm going to. I asked and then I did anyway. Look at this. What an amazing photo. That is so cute. Asmodeus. Now, I don't know what I'm looking at here. Oh, I think... Oh, the head's poking out. Okay, I see. It's just a slightly more blurry. Okay, I see. There's the head sticking out. I don't know why it's, like, pixelated. The other one is amazing. Look at them. Yeah, look at them. No. What a cutie. That's so cute. I love it. I love the way they're poking out of their little wood. Also, is that the tail poking out on the other end? That's fun. No, that's really cute. Thank you for sharing. By the way, we do have a pet share channel in Discord if you'd like to share your pets. Um, yeah, very, very cute. I like cute babies. The other baby. I'm doing okay, so Sushi Cat, but also not okay. Thanks for asking. Kind of have some hand tendon and joint issues at the moment. How's Joe? I am doing well. I also have some tendon issues in my hand. It's probably not as bad as yours, because it's not keeping me from painting. But yeah, I can get a little sore. And if I bend my wrist a certain way, right along here, it can kind of hurt. Luckily, it's not too bad right now, but it feels like... I think it's because I sleep funny. I think I sleep with my hand curled up and I sleep on my wrist. And so it's putting like a constant pressure on my arm. And it's... I have a hand brace I'll sometimes wear it to sleep because I will randomly sleep on my arm because I sleep on my face. I'm a face sleeper or a front, I sleep on my stomach. Um, so yeah, I think it's because of the way I sleep. Then I kind of overworked them. Oh no. Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, I'm hoping mine doesn't get worse. I'm not really doing probably as much as I could or should to get better, but it seems to be just staying the same. I'm trying to make... I know this is silly. Is this silly? I'm trying to make this just look nice. Ooh, that's bright. I'm trying to make the whole thing look like a nice composition. Yeah, I think this could be... something like that. Oh no, yeah, no, it's okay. But yeah, I think also a lot of it is like I just use my computer a lot, so there's a lot of like wrist movement, and if I'm not careful, my wrist will be side to side, and that's not good for it. It's called mommy wrist or mommy thumb. I've never heard of that, but that sucks. Is that from like picking up like a child? Is that the idea? And so like puts pressure on here? I could see that being a thing. A lot of names are just like, you know, oh, a lot of moms seem to have this, and so not that dads can't pick up children, obviously, but so maybe a stupid term these days, but it would be understandable that if it was from holding a child a certain way. But anyway, but yeah, that sucks. Tendon issues are no joke. Lots of, I mean, it could be. Yeah, it could very well be that. Connected to lots of chore kind of tasks. Yeah. I don't know. I was only speculating. Lifting pans can worsen it. Oh, gotcha. There are some exercises you just found that said they're able to prevent it. Yeah, but a lot of preventive stuff, right? You have to do it before you get the problem. Like, most exercise is preventative, right? Like, that's what exercise is. It keeps you fit and healthy so that you're not gonna... Doing exercise isn't gonna, like, fix your pulled muscle, right? You just gotta heal. So, yeah. I'm pretty sure, like, all exercise is preventative. Joe, you were right about picking up babies in the name. Oh, really? It was a total guess. I had no idea. Just drawing little shapes here. I'm pretty much wrapping up stream. Just kind of polishing this up to make it look nice. I figure if I'm some brushwork exercises, which is kind of what I'm doing. Maybe. But yeah, thanks for being here, everybody. I really appreciate it. Oh gosh, did my stream just die? Wait, did my stream just die? Am I alive? Anyway, somewhere along the line, I think my stream crapped out on me. I've dropped 10,000 frames at some point during this stream. So anyway, thanks for being here. Ooh, let's take a look again, Rihanna. Oh, Rihanna, wait, oh, did you redeem a print? Hold on. I missed what happened. Oh, print redeem. Gotcha. The sound died. Oh, weird. You're alive. Okay. Rihanna, thank you for the print redeem. I will send that out. I do have this print. The fairy print. But yeah, thank you for the print redeem. For anyone who doesn't know how the print redeem works, I have a print redeem where I will... you just, for channel points on stream, you can redeem a print, and I will send it anywhere in the world. Shipping is on me. I pay. I use these stamps right here. They're literally sitting next to me. They're international stamps. I stick them in a... They're small prints. The prints look like this. Let me just reach one over, grab one. They're just these gloss. They're not glossy. They're matte, but they do look a little shiny here. They're matte prints, and yeah, I just stick them in an envelope. I sign the back. I write a little thank you note, and I send them out. So yeah, they just require channel points. Oh, I'm lagging a bit. It's okay. But anyway, yeah. Thanks, Rihanna. Thank you for being here. Good to see you again. It's pretty. It is yours. Well, I'm very flattered. Thank you. From the heart. I appreciate it. But yeah, let's find somebody to raid. I guess I'll give my outro closing thing that I do, because now that I have my stream on YouTube for the VOD. Thanks for being here. I stream 3 days a week, Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Today is Thursday, so next stream will be Saturday. I don't always do study streams, but when I do, this is what they look like. So, see ya. See ya next Saturday, and thanks again for being here.